The Integr8tion Institute, written and narrated by Tony Nichols. Yes, I shouted, oblivious to the stares of my fellow commuters. I didn't care. I was too focused on the email my boss had just sent. Mary, I can't believe it. Jarvisson has officially invited you to the Institute. I've spent the last few hours convincing everyone that we can round up the money for the airfare, and I got you booked on a flight tomorrow evening. 2 days and nights to dig out a story for us. This was it. The opportunity I'd been working towards for months. All the favours I'd done, the extra hours I'd put into this collaborative venture, the low pay a growing YouTube news channel dished out, they had finally paid off. Here was my chance to see my sister. No, a chance to rescue my sister from the insidious cult that had ensnared her. I'd not heard from Sarah in, 8 months? 9? No one had. That bastard Jarvisson isolated any of the poor, vulnerable people who turned to him for help, just like every other cult out there. I came back to reality as people pushed past me to get off the train. This is my stop, I thought. I joined the exodus late, which prompted a few choice words from a lady who was trying to get past. I was in too good a mood to snarl back, so I just beamed at her. Sorry, I said cheerfully. Without conscious thought, I started the familiar walk from the station back home, as if on autopilot, while I thought about the cult and its leader, Thomas Jarvisson, the head of the Integr8tion Institute. Possibly the worst named cult ever, in my opinion at least, with that stupid spelling with an 8 that just didn't work. Very tech bro. At first glance, the message they preached was one that few would object to. On their social media accounts and during their events, they offered a safe haven, an eco-friendly, inclusive commune that took in anyone of any creed, culture, gender or sexuality, all set in a relatively remote area of Sweden, to the east of Västerås. It sounded so good, idyllic even. Then it got weirder. Jarvisson claims to have been in contact with an alien council that will intervene in all Earth's problems if we can simply show them that we are able to work together peacefully. They will happily give us the technology for free energy, clean up our atmosphere to prevent us suffering due to climate change, even give us access to a travel network that will let us roam amongst the stars. We just need to not attack each other. Unfortunately, the aliens haven't deigned to explain the basics of these technologies, so we just have to take it all on faith. And faith in Jarvisson specifically, because the aliens will only speak to him. Tomorrow night. Not long to sort things out, I thought as I opened my apartment door. I kicked off my shoes and awkwardly took off my coat, superstitiously not wanting to put down my phone, as if letting go of it would change the contents of the email and take this opportunity away from me. Attached to the email was a document sent directly from the Institute, a contract I needed to sign and return, detailing the restrictions that were going to be placed on me. I opened it up, hand shaking a little, ignoring the rest of the email for now. I had to know immediately if I was going to be prevented from seeing Sarah. I scanned through the legalese, the first paragraph, a rambling jumble of words that basically meant I was invited to the Institute, but that this was not an NDA. Interesting, I murmured to myself. So this isn't a contract to stop me reporting on what I see. Were they really that confident they had nothing to hide? Surely not. I read on through sections that denied liability for anything happening to me or my possessions by members of the Institute, other guests, or random acts of nature. Apparently they could murder me in my bed, and it would all be my fault, at least according to my reading of the contract. I waived my right to have my embassy intervene on my behalf. I waived my ability to sue the Institute for a comprehensive range of injuries and illnesses they may cause. This contract had me waving so much I'm surprised my arms could take it. Ah, here we go. All electronic devices would be taken from every visitor, ostensibly to allow us to fully experience the haven, free from the contamination modern technology brings. This rang very hollow, given Jarvisson's history as a tech mogul in Silicon Valley, his numerous connections to many a tech billionaire, and the Institute's own constant and vocal presence on social media. It was obviously intended to stop the various journalists that were being invited from doing any real investigations, but was covered with a plausible enough reason that was more than adequate to deflect any difficult questions. Typical of Jarvisson. This was a problem for the channel, of course, but it wasn't the restriction I was petrified of seeing. I nervously read through the rest of the document, dreading the rule that said we couldn't speak to the members. There was no such restriction. My heart leapt as a steady sense of dread that had been building was instantly released. The lifting of tension brought tears to my eyes. I signed the document and sent it off to the Institute email address the document listed, almost instantly getting a confirmation of receipt. I was going to see Sarah. With that done, I read the rest of Victoria's email. It was filled with very mixed messages, stressing the need to be careful and not take risks. The very next sentence encouraging me to dig for answers, whatever it took. I ignored it. The NewsTube channel was important to me. It paid the bills, barely, and let me do the investigative journalism that really made a difference. And I'd invested a lot of time and energy into it. I wanted to investigate Jarvisson, bring him to justice, stop him exploiting all the vulnerable people that were drawn in by his lies, and get my sister back. I didn't need to be told to do it. The last line of the email read, "I know you'll prove everyone wrong and show them you were worth investing in." Nicely veiled threat there, Vic. It took some time to get to sleep that night. My mind was filled with fantasies of coming home with Sarah after denouncing Jarvisson and the Institute. A viral video report on their downfall, catapulting the channel into the tens of millions of subscribers. As if to compensate for my unearned optimism, my dreams were darker, and I woke to a hollow feeling in my chest from the image of a brainwashed Sarah asking me who I was. Welcome to Stockholm. Please remain seated until we come to a complete stop. Thank you for flying with British Airways. We hope you enjoy your stay in Sweden. One of the cabin crew handed me my bag from the overhead locker, one of the benefits first-class travel apparently brought. The 18-hour trip from New York had been the most enjoyable travelling experience of my life, all thanks to the last-minute booking forcing the channel to pay for the most expensive option. It was amazing how much difference extra space of your own made to the comfort level of a flight, and being able to lie down flat for a bit of a rest was a game-changer. As I walked out of the arrivals area into Stockholm Airport, a large man in a very well-tailored black suit stood out. It was more than just his physical presence that caught my eye. He was also holding a card with my name printed on it. I thought that only happened in movies, but I decided to follow the script and approach the imposing figure. "I'm Mary Wheeler. Ms. Wheeler, we have an area reserved while we wait for all our guests to arrive. Please, follow me." He smiled as he said this, and his voice was calm, but there was something about him that unnerved me, an air or aura that only added to his intimidating presence. "Thank you. Can you tell me who we are waiting for? How many people have been invited?" "That information has not been provided to me. I'm here to escort you to the waiting area. Do you need assistance with your luggage?" He gestured towards my small, wheeled suitcase and shoulder bag. "No, I'm fine, thanks." He nodded and smiled, turned sharply, and headed out of the main airport. I followed a foot behind him as he seemed to carve a path through the bustling airport crowds merely by gazing at people. He didn't fit the stereotype of a cult member. There was a confidence and threat about him that put me more in mind of a soldier. "I didn't catch your name," I said. "It's Robert." "Hi, Robert. Have you been with the Institute for long?" I just caught myself before I said cult. I didn't think that would have gone down well. "Long enough to know it's where I belong." "Ah, this is how it's going to be, eh? How long were you in the army before you found the Institute?" "It doesn't matter who you were before you joined the Institute. It's the beginning of a new life, and all are welcome." "Really? This bullshit? I'm not even at the Institute yet." I decided that maybe it wasn't worth pushing my luck with Robert. Chances are he didn't know that much. Plus the army training that I was increasingly sure he had received included the ability to resist questioning a little more persuasive than mine. We walked for a minute or so in silence, moving away from the shopping area of the airport to more industrial-looking buildings. We arrived at the most out-of-place door I think I'd ever seen. In the side of an otherwise ordinary steel-framed industrial building were recessed glass revolving doors, straight out of a Silicon Valley giant's headquarters. "Here we are, Miss Wheeler. Through the doors on your right are the bathrooms. Straight ahead is the lounge area, and to your left is the bar. Please feel free to order drinks and food from the menu, though we don't anticipate too long a wait for the other guests. Please." Robert gestured me through the doors. As I stepped into the space between doors, they started to rotate, too quickly for me to pull my suitcase through. Even as I started to react, the doors slowed down, as if aware that the case would be caught. I stopped moving, the suitcase still partly on the pavement outside. The doors stopped too. I slowly pulled the suitcase towards me, and the doors matched pace, closing the gap just as my suitcase had cleared it. Impressive tech. I looked back towards Robert, wondering if my antics had cracked his impassive facade, but he had already left. His mission complete, probably. I headed towards the lounge area, wanting to drop off my luggage before I checked out the food situation. 3 guests had already arrived, occupying 2 striking couches, a beautiful chrome and glass table situated between them. The couches must have been modelled after a quotation mark, a curved design that started out like a conventional couch, curving around to the other side where it formed a tail that curled back in on itself. A man that looked to be in his early 20s had perched on the curled end, one leg tucked under his body, talking excitedly while 2 women listened. One was sat on the other end of the same sofa as the excited man, nodding along as he spoke. She was around the same age as me, mid to late 20s or so, wearing a cap that had an alien face on it, though I was too far away to read the writing. On the couch opposite sat an older woman, perhaps mid-40s, listening to the man, with a slight frown on her face. I heard a snippet of conversation before the trio noticed me. "And the government shut it down. They were too scared of a communication tech that they wouldn't be able to listen into. They just paid him off to never use it. That's where the money came from," the man was saying. "And that's what he's using to contact the Alien Council," the younger woman added. "Yes, that may be," the man replied a little uncertainly, bringing out a trace of an Indian accent. It was the older lady who first noticed me as I approached. "Hello there, I'm Natasha. This is Satish and Alyssa," she said. "Hey," said Satish. "Hi," said Alyssa, the "I don't believe in humans" writing on her hat now readable. "Hi everyone, I'm Mary." "Satish here was telling us a fairy tale about Jarvisson's source of money," Natasha said, as I stowed my bags at the end of the couch she sat on. Satish took the insinuation of lying with good grace. "So how do you think that money ended up in the Institute's bank account?" he asked Natasha. "Great question," she replied, sitting forward conspiratorially on the couch, so far forward that she was in danger of falling off the edge. "I traced the funds as best I could. A whole host of crypto transactions over a year, straight out of half a dozen of those crypto mixers. $300 million of totally untraceable funds. If it had been a government, they wouldn't be using sites they are trying to shut down. Unless they run the mixers themselves, trying to insinuate themselves into the workings of a currency designed to avoid their control, trying to stand in the way of progress," Satish replied. Natasha shook her head and sighed. "Anyone need a drink from the bar?" I asked, not wanting to get drawn into an argument over conspiracy theories. Natasha and Satish both declined, but Alyssa decided to come with me. "What do you do?" she asked as we walked to the bar, leaving Natasha and Satish debating the Institute's financing. "I work for a news channel on YouTube called NewsTube." "Oh yeah, I know you guys. You do all the scam reveal stuff, right?" "Yeah, we're investigative reporters. Trying to expand into general news too. So this visit is part of that," I lied, not wanting to tip my hand to an obvious fan of the Institute. "That's cool. I like you guys. I'm really glad to see you growing." "Thanks so much. What do you do, Alyssa?" "I'm a reporter too. I investigate all the reports and evidence that not only are we not alone in the universe, but we've been visited loads of times. There's not a clear pattern yet, no sign of what they want from us, but maybe Thomas Jarvisson knows more. I don't know if the government paid him off like Satish said, but he definitely has some advanced communication technology and a very compelling reason to hide it." We reached the bar and ordered drinks, a simple Diet Coke for me and a more elaborate mocktail for Alyssa. "And you think that reason is tied to aliens?" I asked her. "Yes, well, maybe. That's what I want to find out with this trip. We know Jarvisson is in touch with the Alien Council, but not how involved our governments are. I want to know if they are in touch with the Council themselves, working with Thomas or against him." As with most conspiracy theories, there was an element of truth. Jarvisson did have a notable foray into the high-tech communications field, and he mysteriously closed a company that owned the IP, despite an incredibly high valuation and a planned IPO to make the company public. It was an awful lot of money for him to turn down, in the billions, so there was more than enough fodder to feed a host of ever more fanciful theories. It's going to be difficult to find any evidence with no phones, no cameras. My viewers know they can trust me. I wouldn't lie about finding evidence. I just need to see it, that's all. I gratefully picked up my newly arrived drink and took a long sip to prevent my eyes from rolling back into my head. A trust me bro alien conspiracy reporter? This is who Jarvisson was inviting? Thanking the barman as Alyssa picked up her drink, we returned to the lounge area. "Well, I hope you find what you were looking for," I said. "Oh, thanks, Mary. And what is it you're looking for on this trip?" Fortunately, I didn't need to answer, as our last guest had arrived. A large man who I estimated to be in his late 50s stood mopping his brow with a handkerchief as Natasha and Satish welcomed him. "Thank you. Yes, hello. I'm Michael. Pleased to meet you," he said, in an accent I thought sounded German. Alyssa and I introduced ourselves to Michael as he sat down on a free couch. "Can I get you a drink?" I asked him. "Thank you, but no. I was informed that we would shortly be leaving. I just needed to sit. We walked here at a faster pace than I am used to." "They do walk quickly, don't they?" Alyssa said. "Army personnel always expect you to keep up," Michael said. "Army?" Satish said, sounding genuinely surprised. "They are not Army. They are from the Institute, are they not?" Michael gave Satish an appraising look, pausing to wipe his brow again before answering. "I've reported from war zones for many years. I know Army, or ex-Army people, when I see them." Glad I wasn't the only one, I thought. Satish shrugged. "It is important to have trustworthy people working for you, people that will not gossip. Where better to find them than from the Army," he said. "That suggests Jarvisson has something to hide, doesn't it?" Natasha said. "All businessmen have secrets. That's how we succeed," Satish retorted. Further conversation was cut short as three large, muscular men walked through the revolving doors, Robert the third to emerge into the foyer. They all wore the same clothes and the same opaque expressions on their faces. "Here we go," said Alyssa, quickly finishing her drink and grabbing her luggage. Satish a step behind her. They were escorted out of the building by one of the large men, as Robert and the remaining ex-army man approached us. I helped Michael retrieve his luggage, as he had not fully recovered from his forced march, and he and Natasha were escorted away, leaving me with Robert. "This way, Miss Wheeler," he said, leading me out to three extremely expensive-looking cars. I recognised them as the latest top-of-the-line electric cars from the biggest Silicon Valley-owned car manufacturer, and wondered just how much money Jarvisson was taking from the poor people that joined his cult. I sat in the back, surprised at how ordinary it felt. There was none of the opulence I was expecting, nothing like the soft leather and teak inlays I'd seen in videos of Rolls-Royce cars. This could have been any mid-range car, as far as I could tell, though the silent acceleration marked it as electric. Much like the car, Robert was silent as we drove out of the airport onto the motorway. I settled in, responding to a few messages while I still had access to my phone, reminding people that I would be uncontactable for a few days. I grabbed a bottle of water and a snack from my bag, a pack of Swedish fish that I thought was very thematic for the trip. "How long is the journey to the Institute, Robert?" "It should take around 2 hours, Miss Wheeler." "Is there anything I should be keeping an eye out for?" "Sweden is beautiful. There is much to see once we leave the city." Robert hadn't taken his eyes off the road as he robotically answered my questions. Could he be an AI? I pondered briefly, though quickly dismissed it. If they had robots that looked and moved as close to a human as Robert did, They would have made them more interactable, allowed for more human-like responses. It was futile trying to get information from this automaton, so I stared out of the window as we drove. Robbie the robot was at least truthful. Once out of the city, Sweden was beautiful. I sat back and enjoyed the journey and snack. The Institute Haven looked shockingly like a military base. We came to a halt in an orderly line in front of thick metal gates. Sandwiched between them was a security kiosk, staffed by another Robbie robot clone, staring out at us impassively. Stretching out as far as I could see to either side of the gates stood imposing walls, easily 10 feet tall with barbed wire at the top. They really didn't want people getting in or out, I thought to myself. Please wait in the car, Ms. Wheeler. Not waiting for a response, Robert climbed out of the car and strode towards the kiosk, joined by the other Institute representatives turned chauffeurs. I tried the door just to check. It was locked. Not like I've got anywhere to go. Stretching away from the compound was barren Swedish landscape. The road we had travelled along was the only other man-made structure in view. Staring out from the locked car, I felt isolated and trapped. The 3 chauffeurs returned to their cars after a brief conversation with whoever stood guard in the kiosk, accompanied by yet another automaton, this one with a clipboard. He visited each of the cars in turn, reaching through the rear window where my fellow invitee sat to take something from them, consulting his clipboard, then moving on to the next car. When he arrived at my car, my window rolled itself down before I was politely asked to hand over my passport for verification. I pretended to fumble around in my bag to see if it caused a reaction, but these robots have been programmed with patience above all else. Tiring of my own game, I handed over my passport and waited the few moments it took for it to be checked. "Thank you, Miss Wheeler. Welcome to the Institute," he said, and started to walk away. "Hey, my passport!" "It will be safe with us during your stay." My window rolled itself up before I could demand my own property back, despite hammering the controls, no doubt controlled by Robert. "You can't just take my passport," I yelled through the closed window. "It is purely for safekeeping," said Robert as he fastened his seatbelt. "The Institute grounds are large, and we wouldn't want it to go missing. It was in the agreement that you signed." Damn, that does sound familiar, I thought, realising that I'd skimmed far too much of the contract. Up ahead, the gates opened with a clanking, rattling noise, cutting off further conversation and revealing a small parking area which the 3 cars almost filled. A substantial fence ran along the edges to end in a welcoming, glass-fronted building, a strange contrast to the bleak, militarised entrance. If you ignored the fences, that is, which I didn't. "Enjoy your stay, Miss Wheeler," Robert said as he opened my passenger door. "Yeah, thanks." I lagged a little behind the others as I entered the reception area, which had the look of a corporate headquarters. Here were the same comma-style couches from the airport lounge, artfully arranged to frame an ivory and glass front desk, staffed by the first people from the Institute that didn't have the look of ex-soldiers. A man and a woman sat behind the desk, both wearing light blue robes, more in keeping with martial artists than standard corporate attire. I wonder if they actually know martial arts, I thought to myself. This place was so ultra-security conscious that I wouldn't be surprised if they had deadly assassins staffing the front desk. "Welcome, Miss Wheeler," the young woman said as I joined the others. "Now that we are all here, please follow Gregory to the storage rooms." Gregory left his post behind the desk and gestured behind him to a door with an electronic lock beside it, unlocking it by presenting his wrist to the smooth black surface. A green light flashed and he pushed open the door into a small room, containing a dozen safes and a desk with a monitor, keyboard and mouse. "Cool tech. What chip do you have implanted?" asked Satish. "Proprietary tech from one of Mr. Jarvisson's companies," Gregory replied. "Has he solved the rejection issues?" Satish asked. "I've had the implant for the last 3 years without issue," Gregory answered, which seemed to impress Satish, though to my mind many more questions were raised. What company was he talking about? As far as anyone knew, Jarvisson had left the tech entrepreneur game when he set up the Institute. "Please," Gregory continued, interrupting the question Satish had just started to ask, Put all your technical devices, keys, wallets, purses and coins into one of the safes before you pass through the scanning system. Everything you need will be provided by the Institute. Even though I knew this was coming, it was still surprisingly difficult to let go of my phone. Putting it inside the safe felt like relinquishing the power to bring Jarvisson to justice, and I hated it. Putting off that moment for a brief second or two, I turned to look at my fellow invitees. Everyone else reflected my own reluctance. Reflexively, I checked my phone for messages before sealing it away. No signal. Odd. I switched the phone off and placed it in the safe along with my purse and keys, closing the door. Once we had all finished futzing with our phones, Gregory took the number of each of our safes, making note on the computer before leading us back into the foyer. Thank you. This way. We were led to a doorway hidden behind the huge Integr8tion Institute sign that faced the entrance, into a room that reminded me of the airport security area we had all just passed through a few hours ago, though redecorated with a far larger budget. A white conveyor belt passed through the typical-looking scanning machine, covered in shining chrome, spotlessly clean and virtually silent. Behind the expected screen was another Institute member, a young lady wearing the same style of martial arts robe, though white rather than light blue. She smiled at the group. Please put your luggage onto the belt and step forward to the gate, one at a time. The gate was a full-body scanner, similar to the ones some airports have, though deeper than any I'd seen before. Big enough to fit 3 or 4 of me at a time. Michael was the first one to step inside. Within seconds an alarm beeped, summoning another white-robed Institute member, this one a large man, who beckoned Michael to step back out of the scanner. Mr. Muller, do you have any electronic devices on you? No, everything is in the safe, Michael replied. Any medical devices? Oh, yes, I have a pacemaker. Surely that couldn't be setting the scanner off. It is a very sensitive scanner. Please step inside again and we will run a more extensive scan. Will that not set off the scanner again? Michael asked. We can pinpoint the sources with the longer scan and exclude your pacemaker. The man gestured Michael back into the scanner. All this advanced tech just for a handful of guests? This is crazy. The extensive scan took a couple of minutes, which the rest of the group spent listening to Satish gush about the advanced technologies involved, most of which I assumed was pure speculation. Michael passed the test, and the rest of us filed through. No one had tried to smuggle tech in, intentionally or not. We were soon reunited with our luggage, and led through a plain white door into the Institute proper. Entering the Institute proper was the most jarring change of scenery I think I'd ever experienced. I went from an airport security area into a constable painting. A small area of compacted earth, maybe 20 feet wide, separated the security area from fields of wheat that stretched away on both sides as far as I could see, bisected by a wide dirt track that I assumed functioned as a road to the buildings I could make out in the distance. To the right was a row of very new trucks or jeeps. They were a combination of both, as big as a large pickup truck, but with the flatbed section enclosed. Amazing, said Satish. They have the new ET300s. They've only just come onto the market. How did they get them here already? Jarvisson has friends in many tech companies, Natasha remarked dryly. Satish seemed oblivious to Natasha's tone, and walked over to the trucks to inspect them. Or kiss them, I thought uncharitably. He was unreasonably excited. He didn't really get the chance to know the trucks as well as he may have wanted. 2 smaller vehicles silently emerged from behind the row of trucks, more akin to enclosed golf carts than cars, driven by 2 white-robed Institute members, both young women. Are all the white-robed members young? I wondered. Satish jogged back to our little group as the carts pulled up, the 2 women smiling at us as they jumped out and introduced themselves. Hi, I'm Rachel. And I'm Leon. We're here to take you into the main residential area. The conduit wants to welcome you to our haven. The conduit? Alyssa asked. He who acts as the channel for the council to communicate with us. You know him as Thomas Jarvisson, Rachel said. Oh yeah, conduit, of course. That's perfect, Alyssa said wonderingly, her mind apparently blown away by this clever linguistic feat. Leon and Rachel seemed pleased at Alyssa's reaction, both reaching out a hand to touch one of Alyssa's arms. Alyssa grasped each girl's forearms, sharing a moment. I turned as I heard a faint sigh from Natasha and caught Michael shaking his head with a look of concern. How often do Leon and Rachel do that to people they greet? I looked over at Satish. He seemed entranced by these two women, or at least by their welcome and the connection they had instantly made with Alyssa. We were invited into the carts, so I joined Natasha in the second one, driven by Leon. Michael opted to share a ride and conversation with Satish and Alyssa. Rachel sped off, barreling down the dirt road at a breakneck speed. Not the best choice, Michael. Leanne chose a more reasonable pace for our cart. We drove through the fields of wheat, then through plots of land given over to root vegetables of some kind, where we could see an occasional white-clothed figure working on their knees. I studied each intently, hoping to catch a glimpse of Sarah, but they were too far away to identify. How many of you live here in the Haven? Natasha asked Leanne. I'm not sure of the exact number, Leanne replied. Maybe 100 or so? You'd have to ask the Integrators, they would know. Integrators? Who are they? I asked, giving up my futile search for the fields. It was time to earn my pay and dig deeper. They are the purple-robed hands of a conduit, who help spread the lessons he learns among the rest of us. They are always there to answer questions and help us achieve a state of community that the Council needs to see before they intervene. And how do you set up these question and answer sessions? Can you just ask for them? No. The Integrators usually ask us to join them in one-on-one sessions in the evening, if they see we are in need of a little guidance. And where do these sessions take place? The Integrators have separate buildings away from the main housing area. And what happens in these sessions? Natasha asked. I wouldn't know, Leanne said proudly. I've never been found in need of guidance. I know the path the conduit has set out for us, and I follow it faithfully to save humanity from its mistakes. Figures they would send a goody-two-shoes brainwashed member to greet guests like us. I stayed quiet and let Natasha ask some questions. I didn't want Leanne to feel interrogated. She was likely to clam up if we were too confrontational. And how do they know you need help? Sorry, that others need help, Natasha continued. Aren't they too busy with all the chores there must be to keep this place running? Keeping us all to the path of full integration into the Alien Council is the core mission of the Institute. Nothing is more important. What are a few extra hands in the fields if we stray from our purpose? Yes, I see your point, Natasha replied, managing to sound sincere. How many integrators are carrying out this important work? 10 or so, I think, Leanne answered. A police force then, I thought? Surveillance, judgment, and perhaps even punishment? You seem unsure how many people live here. People come and go, and socialising is not my priority, the mission is. Isn't building a community a core part of the mission? Leanne shifted a little in her seat, glancing in the rearview mirror to look at Natasha, a frown creasing her brow. Yes, it is, and I take all parts of the mission seriously, and carry them out with my full heart. I play my part in building the community here. A hint of anger had crept past the brainwashed cult member's facade. Does that help you achieve this state of community? Natasha asked Riley, pointing out of the window. I followed her finger to see fields of slim plants that reminded me of stinging nettles, though they were taller and straighter. Leanne, still glaring at Natasha in the rearview mirror, saw the gesture. Yes, very much, though not in the way you are insinuating. We use the hemp to make our clothes. Only eat the seeds. We even build with it. Without it, we wouldn't have homes. Oh, I didn't know hemp was so adaptable, I interjected, wanting to take the heat off Natasha and cool Leanne down. We needed the Institute members relaxed if we wanted to find out what was really going on here, not angry and defensive. Natasha glanced over at me, gave me a brief smile, and rested back into her seat. A smile replaced a frown on Leanne's face as she regaled me about the many benefits of hemp, sounding like a 3-minute-long TED talk. By the time she had finished, we had arrived at a large 3-storey building covered in individual windows rather than a continuous line. It reminded me of a budget chain hotel. We followed Leanne around the corner and emerged into a modern pedestrianised town, nestled within a forest clearing, yet another clearly demarcated area, as if the whole compound was laid out on a grid. Does Jarvisson think he is playing a survival building game? Despite the jarring layout changes, I begrudgingly admitted to myself that this looked to be a pleasant place to live. There were 3 large buildings set out in a U-shape, and from the front they were unmistakably hotels. The middle third of the bottom floors were glass-fronted, with the now standard gleaming chrome frames. Peering into the closest building, there was even a reception desk seating area, giving the small town the feel of a woodland tourist resort. A very expensive one. It costs you everything you own. A smaller building was situated in the centre of this large town square, with similar construction materials to hotels, though here the entire front of the building shone with reflected light. I couldn't tell from here what it was intended for, but its location marked it out as important. "Let's join the others," Leanne said. "Please, follow me." We followed Leanne into the building behind us, past an unoccupied reception desk, and into a reception area that had the same comma-style couches that we had rested on in the airport lounge. 4 of them were clustered around a large glass and chrome table. The rest of the group were waiting for us beside the elevators. Alyssa and Satish were chatting happily with Rachel, while Michael stood on his own a few feet away. Rachel broke off her conversation as she spotted us. "Good. Let's show you to your rooms. You've got a couple of hours to settle in before dinner. Mr. Jarvisson is looking forward to meeting you all," she said. "We're having dinner with him," Alyssa said a little disbelievingly. "Yes, of course," said Leanne. "That's why he invited you all." "Jarvisson invited us personally? Why?" We were escorted into an elevator, taken to the 3rd floor and shown to our rooms. Alyssa, Satish and Natasha were taken to the left, Michael and I to the right. Leanne handed me the door key for room 321, a standard electronic hotel key. I paused a little before swiping myself in, waiting outside the door, watching as Michael was taken to a room on the opposite side of the hallway, a couple of doors down. Was that considerate or to prevent us from talking to each other? I swiped, pushed the door open and quickly entered, not wanting Leanne to see that I had lingered. The room was larger than I expected, almost the size of a suite. Beside the door was a coat rack above a shoe rack, both attached to the wall. In front of me stood a coffee table between 2 comfortable-looking armchairs. Beyond that was a double-sized bed flanked by bedside tables, facing a writing desk complete with a reading lamp, drawers and a desk chair. 2 doors led off the main room, one to a large L-shaped bathroom, the other to a closet. I wheeled in my luggage and started to unpack. Once done, I sunk into one of the armchairs. I instinctively reached into my bag for my phone, feeling strangely discomforted when I realised I no longer had it. I was struck by how quiet it was. I hadn't realised how constant the noise in my environment was. I always had music, television or at least a podcast to drown out the constant noise of traffic. Here, there was nothing. It was unnerving. In an attempt to shake this feeling, I ran myself a deep hot bath. Unsurprisingly, there was little in the way of luxury bathroom items in the room, which is why I'd brought my own. I sang to myself as I soaked away the minor aches and pains from the long trip, for no other reason than to break the oppressive silence. Without a clock, watch or phone, I had no idea what the time was, so I didn't linger too long. I dressed for dinner before settling into the armchair. I couldn't help but wonder again why Jarvisson had invited me here. He must know I tried to talk to Sarah, so was this a huge PR stunt to convince me to stop? Why would he bother with that? Wild theories and speculations chased each other as I sat in silence. It was a relief when a knock on the door summoned me to dinner and my first meeting with Jarvisson. Rachel was waiting for me in the reception area, chatting happily with Alyssa and Satish, who both seemed almost giddy at the prospect of dinner with Jarvisson. Neither could stand still. Satish paced between the couch and his companions, while Alyssa shifted from foot to foot. Michael sat on one of the couches while we waited for Natasha. "Hi, Mary," said Alyssa. "I can't believe we're actually meeting the Thomas Jarvisson. Can you?" "Well, that is why we were invited, right?" "Yeah, but I didn't know we'd get this close. I've got so many questions to ask for my top supporters. I hope he answers them." "Of course he wants to talk to us," Satish said, pausing in his nervous pacing. "He will want to hear my business idea. That must be why I was invited. I bet he heard about it through his Silicon Valley contacts." "Or the Alien Council," Alyssa added. "Yes, or that, I guess." With perfect timing, a ping announced Natasha's arrival, cutting off a conversation that I didn't want to take part in. "Okay, great, we're all here," said Rachel. "Please, follow me." With that, she led us to the central building that we'd seen on our arrival. Still bright, but now with light streaming out of huge glass panels, rather than reflecting from them. The interior appeared to be one huge hall, a good quarter taken up by an elevated stage, where a handful of large round tables had been placed. The lower area had maybe 36 unoccupied tables placed around 30 feet from the base of the stage, a lonely island amid the sea of space that surrounded them. As Rachel led us into the building and up onto the stage, I spotted the lighting rigs above us and mounts for cameras at regular points around us. As we were being shown to the most central table, a man in midnight purple robes strode confidently from the opposite side of the stage. He looked like the stereotype of a Swedish man, tall, blonde and chiselled. A wolf in a handsome sheep's clothing. "Welcome, welcome," Thomas Jarvisson said with a warm smile. "I'm so happy you were all able to join me here." "It was our privilege, Mr. Jarvisson," Satish said. "I've wanted to talk to you for so long. I'm such a fan of all of your work." "Thank you, Satish, and please, call me Thomas. I followed your career too, and I'd like to talk to you about your latest venture if you wouldn't mind." You have? I mean, you do?" "Of course." "Oh, that's amazing." Yes, my latest venture. Well, you see, it's a new way of thinking about. Perhaps we should save it for later, when we can talk privately." Satish glanced around at the rest of our group, his eyes wide, and nodded towards Jarvisson. "Let's sit and get to know each other, shall we?" Satish and Alyssa snagged a seat either side of Jarvisson, rushing towards him as if we were playing musical chairs. I was happy with my seat, which afforded me a sideways view of the main part of the hall, where I hoped to spot Sarah. "It's good to finally meet you, Alyssa," said Jarvisson. "I've really enjoyed your podcasts." "You've actually listened to them? Seriously?" "Very seriously," Jarvisson said with a brief smile. "It's very motivating to know people outside of the Institute understand and accept our purpose. It gives me hope. Hope is a dream that becomes a reality." "It is, Alyssa, and it's voices like yours that keep that hope alive." "Oh," Alyssa's voice caught in her throat at the compliment, her face flushing. "We will have time to talk tomorrow. I'm sure you have questions to ask for your audience." Yes, I do. That would be, amazing." Jarvisson smiled, placing a hand gently on Alyssa's shoulder, that deepened her blush, before turning to me. "Mary, so lovely to put a face to a name. Sarah has spoken about you," he said. This unexpected mention of Sarah threw me completely. Any semblance of journalistic purpose was thrown out of the window. "Has she? Is she all right?" "She has, and she is." "Who is Sarah?" Alyssa asked. "My sister." "Oh wow, that's so cool that she is here," Alyssa replied. "Can I speak to her?" I asked Jarvisson, too focused to respond to Alyssa. "I'll ask her, and if she is willing, you can see her tomorrow, if that's all right." "If she is willing?" I asked. "We don't hand out orders here, Mary. Harmony is our goal, not control. Besides, there is no reason why Sarah wouldn't want to talk to you, is there? No reason. Excellent. I'm sure she will be excited to see you. I wasn't so sure. We'd drifted apart in the year before she joined the Institute, and I hadn't been able to shake the feeling that it had all been my fault. After her breakup, she had moved back to our parents' home, hundreds of miles away, ruining our regular Sunday lunch meetups. I missed her calls because of work, and texts from her stayed unread for days sometimes, rather than the minutes it would normally have been. When she first joined this cult, I was angry, wondering why she hadn't asked for help if she had been that unhappy. But maybe she had, and I just hadn't listened. Thank you, I said, unwilling to give Thomas any sign of concern. As Thomas smiled in response, a hum of conversation heralded the arrival of the rest of the Institute. A colourful mix of white and blue-robed figures, chatting in small groups, their attention flicking to the stage area where we sat before taking their places at the tables below. In amongst a group of 10 or so white-robed figures was Sarah. I raised my hand in a small wave as I saw her glance towards the stage. At first she seemed almost comically shocked, but she held my gaze with a more thoughtful expression that gave me some hope. A friend of hers gently pulled her to a seat, where she rejoined the group conversation. A blur of purple broke my line of sight, as 5 so-called integrators filed onto the stage, and took their places at a nearby table, not even taking up half the seats. I turned back to my table and the conversation that I'd tuned out of. "This is a rather obvious sign of your hierarchy, is it not?" said Michael, gesturing to the half-full table. "You are literally elevated above the others." On the contrary, we found early on at the Institute that our members found it stifling to have those that they asked for advice sit amongst them during mealtimes. It is a sacrifice the integrators and I make to isolate ourselves for the benefit of others. As you can see, there is no such separation for those with blue or white robes. Harmony is our goal, and however much I would wish it otherwise, people feel more comfortable with certain boundaries that might look like a hierarchy to outsiders. Glancing back to the main hall, blue and white robed members were mixed haphazardly, just as Thomas had said, though there were no purple robes amongst the white and blue. That didn't seem unreasonable though. The integrator's role, as it had been explained to us, most closely resembled that of teachers, and what student wants to sit at a dinner table with their teachers? "And how exactly did these integrators prove themselves worthy?" asked Michael. "All of our current integrators at the Institute helped in its creation. They have believed in our mission from its inception," Thomas replied. "No white or blue-robed members have been allowed to rise to this higher station." "It is not a case of allowing, Michael. Our way of life here at the Institute can be a significant change to new members, and the integrators are here to help them readjust to their new way of life, and help them integrate with our community, hence their name. The change can be difficult for some, so the integrators act as support, a shoulder to cry on, and an understanding ear to listen, as well as guides to our mission. It is not an easy set of skills to develop. It takes time, and the Institute is still in its infancy." As he was speaking, a young man wearing white robes arrived at our table with our food arranged on a multi-level tray. Thomas was the first to be served. "Thank you, Matthew," he said. Matthew nodded shyly, head down, concentrating on the plates that he continued to hand out to the rest of the table. Cubes of what could be meat on a bed of quinoa and green leaves. "Is this vegan?" Alyssa asked Matthew. "Yes, all our food is," he replied. "We grow all our food here," Thomas interjected. "Take our meal today. We have mushrooms, quinoa, spinach and a tomato sauce, all grown in our greenhouses." "Greenhouses?" said Michael. "How is that environmentally friendly? They must take a huge amount of power." "Not as much as you might think," Thomas answered, "thanks in part to some clever genetic modification to our crops that make them grow hardier than usual. They flourish in a wider range of temperatures, so we don't need to regulate the temperature as often, reducing the power consumption significantly. We have our own hydroelectric power station and solar panels to provide for all our needs." I thought the point of the Institute was to show these aliens that we can live off the land and save the environment, Michael said. The Institute is carbon neutral, actually, if you'd bother to check, Alyssa said. Michael snorted. Indeed it is, Alyssa, Thomas said, causing her to blush again. He focused his gaze back on Michael. It is the aim of the Institute to show the Alien Council that we can live together, in harmony, without further damaging the planet. We don't need to eschew our technology to do so. There is no need to return to an entirely rural way of life. Our society has been living beyond its means for a century, forever seeking ever-increasing financial growth on a planet that has finite resources. Here at the Institute, we merely seek to live within our means, prove that it can be done without sacrificing the progress that we have made, the benefits that technology has brought us. And how do we know that you are living within your means? That all your talk of technology and sustainability isn't a bed of lies that push up you and your friends' tech companies' stock by supposedly proving their products can bring us to a new utopia? Michael asked. You will be able to see for yourself, Michael, Thomas said calmly. We can give you a full tour tomorrow, take you to see whatever you wish, talk to whomever you wish, get the answers you are looking for. That is why you are here, after all. It would be easier if I was allowed my phone, Michael said. If that were the case, we wouldn't be able to give you such free rein around proprietary tech. Wouldn't be able to answer as many of your questions without giving away trade secrets that we trust you will not divulge to our benefactors' competition. I said I won't, and I will honour that agreement if you answer my questions honestly. We will answer all your technical questions, have no fear. We have nothing to hide. Michael nodded sharply, then started eating his meal. I'm curious, Natasha said. How exactly are you funding all this technology? $300 million is a lot of money, but nowhere near enough to pay for all the technology you are talking about. Where does the rest come from? The Institute is a few years away from becoming entirely self-sufficient, but in the meantime, we rely on contributions from friends in the tech industry, as well as my own money. So, why do you insist that every member hands over all of their money when they join? We do not demand anything from our members. If they wish to donate to the cause, we accept however much they feel they can spare, but there is no pressure to do so. And yet every member signs over all their earthly assets to the Institute, of their own free will apparently. What are the odds of that? Continued Natasha. It is extremely gratifying that our members believe in our cause, that they feel that their earthly wealth is worth giving up, to prove to our unearthly friends that we are worthy of their help. Saving our planet and our species is worth any cost. And what of those that leave the Institute? I looked up from my meal. We want the Institute to be a beacon of hope, a shining example of self-sufficient, sustainable, responsible living. But we aren't there yet, and getting there is expensive. Every dime we have we spend on achieving that goal, not just for us here, but for the world at large. If we could, we would return the money our members donate if they make the difficult decision to leave, but we simply do not have it. We do strive to help anyone that leaves to rebuild their lives as best we can, but sadly we cannot finance it. I've spoken to 2 ex-Institute members on my podcast, Alyssa said. Both found jobs at technology companies within a week of leaving, thanks to Thomas. They didn't get their money back though, did they? And where is your money held? Why use a mixer for the donations you were given in cryptocurrency? Natasha said. That's so rude, said Alyssa, echoed by a similar comment by Satish. Thomas smiled. You have a lot of questions. That's understandable. No, they didn't get their money back, but they have the chance to be in a far better position financially than when they joined the Institute. As to our money, a large portion of our donations are given to us via cryptocurrency, which allows us to be free from the financial control of any government. A measure of anonymity gives us some protection against malicious parties seeking to harm us, which sadly does happen. So we do not advertise our wallet address. It can look suspicious, I understand that. but our mission is far too important to allow it to be derailed by malicious actors. So I accept that suspicion, knowing that what we do is for the good of all humanity, even those that distrust us. That suspicion could be allayed by making your books public. Show us where the money is going, Natasha said. Unfortunately, that is not possible. Much of the technology that we use is cutting edge, provided by our friends in the industry. Some of them are my personal friends, not just business colleagues. They have requested that we not disclose the cost of the technology they provide us, as it is substantially cheaper than the standard price. It would hurt their businesses if their customers believe they are overpaying. We don't want to punish those that are helping our mission. I'm sure you can understand that. Do they not receive value from your use of their technology? As Michael said, you act like an advertisement for their claims. Surely customers would write off the cost reduction as mere advertising budget. We are advertising a far more important product than technology, to a far more important market than consumers. We advertise humanity as a whole, to those that can bring us into a galaxy-spanning society with opportunities far beyond the dreams of all but the most imaginative science fiction writers. Any influence we have on the fortunes of those that help us is a happy coincidence, nothing more. Natasha sighed. I have vexed you. My apologies, said Thomas. Perhaps you could take the tour with Michael tomorrow. See with your own eyes where our money has been spent. It should allay your fears of foul play. I wouldn't have a clue how much it all costs, Natasha said. I would, said Satish, if I'm invited. Of course you are, Satish, Thomas said. If you're free early morning, we can meet to discuss your new project, or wait until the evening. I'll be up early for a run, so I'm free after that, said Satish. Wonderful, early morning it is. Alyssa, are you interested in joining the tour? Asked Thomas. Will you be on the tour? Alyssa asked. I wouldn't want the Institute members on the tour to feel any pressure, which sadly can happen if I'm there. We could use that time for our interview, if you would prefer that. Yeah, that'd be cool. My subs have a lot of questions. Then we shall take the time to answer them all, Thomas said with a warm smile. Alyssa beamed. Mary, the invitation is open to you too, of course. When would I be able to talk to Sarah? The tour will start late morning, and I believe Sarah already has a meeting with one of our integrators scheduled around that time. The integrator will ask Sarah if she agrees to a meeting with you instead of the scheduled appointment. Can't you ask her now? Ah, you are worried she will say no and want your mind set at rest. That is understandable, but the evening is for community and rest after a long day. I wouldn't want to burden her with a request, as it could be difficult without the comfort of an integrator's advice and companionship. Should she approach us to ask after you, we would of course pass on your request then, to ease her mind if we felt that it was in her best interest. Why do you get to decide that? It would be her decision to discuss her feelings towards you, not ours. As I said, we do not hand out orders, but we do use our own judgment to spare the feelings of those we care about. Do you hand out orders to your soldiers? Michael asked. We have no soldiers. Whatever our members were before joining our mission is irrelevant. What matters is their belief in what we do. But you have soldiers guarding your gates, collecting guests. Our members are free to choose how they wish to help the Institute. Those that might have served military duty in the past may feel that they are best suited to guard us from those that wish us harm. Some may prefer to act as chauffeurs, which I don't think is the main branch of any military. Satish and Alyssa laughed, and I reluctantly broke into a small smile myself. Robert was absolutely not suited to greeting guests. You talk about those who wish you harm, said Michael. Who exactly are we talking about? There are many people that don't understand our aims. People that have their own beliefs. People that are challenged by the truth that we tell. People that are heavily invested in the status quo of unsustainable consumerism who are threatened by our example. These are powerful groups that have many ways to attack us and our mission. Is that why you need the prison guards at the entrance? Michael said. Security guards, and yes, they are needed. We have had a few incidents of armed individuals attempting entry. Alyssa gasped dramatically, her hands covering her mouth, eyes wide. Thomas continued. Fortunately, our remote location discourages casual visits, and we have increased our local surveillance further out, ensuring that we do not get unexpected company. We are quite safe here. Thomas started to eat his untouched food, and each of us followed suit, bringing the conversation to a halt. I looked out towards Sarah between bites, but never managed to catch her gaze again. She looked happy, laughing and joking with her fellow Institute members, happier than I'd seen her in years. The conversation at our table started up again after a couple of minutes' silence, with Satish asking Thomas questions about the technology the Institute uses for surveillance, in-depth technical stuff that I had no interest in. As Thomas passionately described the network infrastructure used, I noticed the purple-robed integrators stand up from their table as another group of 5 integrators filed onto the stage. I could make out the buzz of conversation between the two groups, though not the words themselves, and was somewhat disturbed by the oddly familiar rhythm. I tried to figure out why as I watched the group that had just finished dinner leave the stage, to be replaced by the new group, but just couldn't put my finger on what it reminded me of. The integrators filed off the stage but didn't leave via the main door. They left via a door behind and to the left of the stage. By chance I'd sat in the perfect position to see through the door as they climbed a staircase higher up into the building. Why are they going upstairs? I glanced around the hall, scouring the upper part of the building. At the front were those huge glass windows, but above the stage and the rear of the building there was something akin to a theatre's balcony section. The lights for the hall appeared to be mounted on the underside of this balcony, so seeing anything above them was impossible when they were switched on. What could be up there that required the integrators' attention during mealtimes? I waited for a pause in the conversation. It took a while, but eventually the tech talk died down for a second. "What's up there in the balcony?" I asked Thomas, pointing behind him. "That's the control area for our stage setup." "Stage setup?" "We record a number of artistic and informative pieces on this stage," Thomas replied, waving his right arm expansively around the raised area occupied by our dining tables. "The lights, cameras and microphones that we use all feed into a control booth, where we can edit or directly stream from." "I'd love to see it," said Alyssa. "Perhaps tomorrow, though I'd need to check our broadcast schedule," Thomas said. "It's shut down right now, and takes a significant amount of power, so we prefer to only use it when necessary. I'm sure you can appreciate that." "Yeah, I get that," Alyssa said. I nearly blurted out a question on why the hell the integrators had all marched up there if it was closed, but bit my tongue just in time. I glanced over at the new bunch of integrators who were talking reservedly at the other table, too quietly for me to hear, a stark difference to the rest of the Institute. They had an air of, not superiority exactly, but professionalism, just like the guards at the front gate working their shifts. Shifts? That's what the chat between integrators felt like, an update during a shift change. I finished eating to a backdrop of Alyssa praising the quality of the videos the Institute had posted across their social media accounts, fishing for compliments about her own content that Thomas was more than happy to dish out. I yawned as discreetly as I could, the long trip and the concern about Sarah having caught up with me. "Mary, we have a group communion planned once we have finished dinner, though you are welcome to pass if you are feeling too tired," Thomas said. "Sorry, it was a really long trip and I am tired," I said through another yawn. "Perfectly understandable. Please do let me know when you'd like to go back to your room." "Now would be good." Thomas glanced over towards the main doors of the auditorium and raised a hand. Within seconds a Robbie clone that I'd not seen before appeared at our table. "Mary here would like to return to her room, if you don't mind?" Thomas asked the man. "Of course. Whenever you are ready, Ms. Wheeler." I stood and said my goodbyes to everyone, not having the energy to question the need for an escort, merely to get a plausible response from Thomas that cleverly obfuscated the Institute's desire to take no chances with its secrets. I was even escorted all the way to my room, though what hidden knowledge I would have been able to uncover between the reception area and my door was anybody's guess. Maybe the elevators tell Institute secrets if you're alone, I thought. If you need anything, please ring reception and they will help as best they can, my guard told me. What number do I need to dial? Just pick the handset up. There is a direct connection to reception. I nodded, swiped my key and pushed open the door. Good night, Miss Wheeler. Yeah, night. I let the door close behind me, kicked off my shoes and lay down on the bed, closing my eyes. I sifted through my experiences during the day, trying to get a sense of what was really going on here at the Institute, but my tired body won out before I could come to any conclusions. I was jolted out of my sleep by the sound of arguing near my door. I welcomed the respite from an unsettling dream where Sarah was laughing and joking as purple-robed figures herded her into a cell. I slid off the bed and tiptoed as quietly as I could to the door. Peering through the peephole, I saw Michael standing a few paces from my room, confronting one of the guards who blocked his path towards the lifts. Because I'm having trouble sleeping and simply want to take a short walk outside to clear my mind, Michael said tersely. I understand, Mr. Mueller. However, we do not run the lights at this time, and it is hazardous to walk around in the dark. Surely you could supply me with a torch or a lantern? We do not have any available. Then let me walk around the hallways in this hotel. I trust I will come to no harm inside. You are quite safe inside, Mr. Mueller. Thank you. I saw Michael walking past my room, quickly followed by the guard. Are you following me? I need no assistance. The guard didn't reply, and I lost sight of the two men as they left the narrow view the peephole afforded me. I assumed that Michael was going to have a silent companion on his little foray around the building. I couldn't help wondering what Michael had been hoping to discover, and just how tight the security was around us. Would I be stopped if I left my room? How did they even know Michael was leaving his? How did they manage to intercept him so quickly? I stared around my room, trying to spot cameras and microphones, as if I actually knew what I was looking for. Maybe I should take a course in espionage techniques when I got home. Apparently, I now needed to know these things. I padded back to the bed and got under the covers, pulling them over my head like a small child, hiding from the monsters in the dark, wanting the comfort of privacy that I felt I wasn't going to find anywhere else in the Institute. I was woken again by the telephone ringing. Yeah? Good morning, Miss Wheeler. I wanted to let you know that breakfast will be served in 15 minutes. Okay, great, thanks. Thank you. I clumsily replaced the receiver after a couple of tries, groaned, then hauled myself out of bed. Out of habit, I went to check my phone for messages, before realising I didn't have it with me. I was surprised how lost I felt without it. I looked around the room again for a clock, before remembering that there was nothing that could tell me the time. Damn, I should have brought a watch. I opened the curtains and peered out of the window, across the fields of hemp. The sun was low in the sky, which I thought meant early morning. That explained how tired I still felt, though who knows what time I'd fallen asleep last night. It felt unsettling to be without that frame of reference. It made the Institute feel even more alien to me. I showered and changed as quickly as I could, not wanting to take the risk that there wouldn't be an option to eat until lunchtime, however long that might be. I grabbed my door key and stepped into the corridor. Good morning, Miss Wheeler. I yelped in surprise. My apologies. I did not mean to startle you. Please, this way to breakfast, the guard said, the same one that had escorted me back here last night. I followed him back to the auditorium as my heart rate returned to normal. Michael and Natasha sat at the same table where we'd had dinner the night before. There were empty plates in front of them and mugs in their hands. The rest of the hall was empty. Clearly the guests had a later breakfast time than the standard members. Good morning, Mary. Good morning, Mary. Hey, Natasha. Hey, Michael. My guard left my side to take up position at the entrance, alongside two other guards. An Institute member in a white robe approached the table. Good morning, Miss Wheeler. We have a choice today of oatmeal, a vegan breakfast burrito, or a berry smoothie. The burrito is excellent, Michael said. Okay, that sounds great. Excellent. We have tea, coffee or water, the Institute member said. Coffee, thanks. The white-clad young woman smiled, collected the empty plates and left the table. No Alyssa or Satish this morning? I asked. You've just missed Alyssa, Natasha replied. She rushed through her meal, too excited to write down her deep and meaningful questions for her incredibly important meeting with Thomas. No sign of Satish, Michael said. Wasn't he getting up early to run, then meeting Thomas? I asked. That's right, said Natasha. We can probably assume he ate some time ago. How he manages on so little sleep is beyond me. The benefits of youth, Michael said. You couldn't have grabbed much sleep, I said. Oh? I heard your argument last night outside my room. Ah, yes. My prison guard enforcing the rules. What were you trying to find out? Michael dropped his voice to barely above a whisper. Does it seem strange to you that there are so many unoccupied rooms? I guess I just assumed I had built room to expand into, I replied in an equally quiet voice. I'm sure that's the impression they want to give us, but I know that there have been at least 300 Institute members come and go over the last year and a half. Really? How did you know that? Searching through social media for mentions of the Institute. Information provided by the public to my own newspaper. All pointing to individuals leaving their lives and joining the Institute. You've had ex-members talk to you? No, and that's why I wanted to take a look around. All the people that we believe joined and then left the Institute never talk about it, never say where they went, and their families and friends keep quiet too. They even delete social media posts that mention the Institute. And remember, all of the people that join the Institute sign all of their money away, Natasha added. That would be a lot of money, I said. And a lot of upset people with no money. So why don't they speak, said Michael. Too scared, I replied, and felt a gnawing, empty feeling in my stomach. Is this what lay in store for Sarah if I convinced her to leave? Michael nodded. I wanted to see what was in the other hotel buildings, how many people were really here, if there was anything being hidden. And why keep us guarded at all times if there's nothing to hide, Natasha said. I would love just 15 minutes with their accounts. I'd settle for 10 minutes unguarded, Michael said. I don't think we'd get either. There's just... I stopped whispering as I saw my food arriving at the edge of the stage. I'm looking forward to our tour, Michael said at a normal volume. You'll have to tell me about it. Ah, thank you, I said as a mug of coffee and a burrito were placed in front of me. Of course. You are seeing your sister, are you not? Michael asked. Hopefully, I said through sips of coffee. Nervous? Asked Natasha. Very, I mumbled through a bite of my burrito. Are you trying to get her to leave? Michael whispered. I nodded, not sure I could speak, past the lump that had just appeared in my throat. I wish you luck. No need to be nervous. I'm sure you'll be back to chatting in no time, Natasha said cheerily, the serious look on her face putting a lie to her words. Thanks. I had a few more bites in companionable silence, which was broken by the arrival of Rachel. Good morning all. Natasha, Michael, are you ready for the tour? Yes. Ready to go. Excellent. Mary, if you'll return to your room once you've finished breakfast, someone will collect you to talk to Sarah. She wants to talk? Yes, of course. You shouldn't have to wait too long. I took a long sip of coffee to hide my relief. Thanks. Michael stood up and followed Rachel with a smile and a nod to me, Natasha giving me a reassuring squeeze on my shoulder as she left. After I'd finished my breakfast, I stood and walked back to my room, my head swirling with such a mix of excitement and worry that I barely noticed my guard's presence flanking me the whole way. I sat down in the chair and waited for my chance to convince my sister to leave this cult and return to the people that love her. I couldn't tell how long I was sitting in that chair, though it was long enough to run through the upcoming conversation several times. The knock at the door made me jump. "Ms. Wheeler?" "Yeah? 1 second." I opened the door to Leanne's smiling face. "Sarah is waiting to see you." I was surprised at the relief I felt to know I was actually going to be seeing Sarah. I had no reason to think it would be cancelled, but I hadn't been able to shake the feeling that things were not going to work out how I hoped, and that had been amplified by the atmosphere of the Institute. I only needed to look at the way Alyssa and Satish had responded to being here to understand the attraction the cult exerted. As if to emphasise the point, Leanne gently touched my arm, responding to my obvious relief, and despite myself, I was grateful. "Thank you. I'm ready to go now," I said, grabbing my door key. "She's in the other building, and I'm sure she is looking forward to seeing you." I nodded sharply, not wanting to show any more vulnerability than I already had. The plan is to get Sarah out, not join up myself. Leanne and I didn't speak on the short walk out of this hotel over to the building on the left. It looked identical to the one we had just left. Leanne led me over to a white-robed receptionist who verified that I was scheduled to meet Sarah. "Sarah is in room 315, the receptionist told us." "Thank you," replied Leanne. "Why do the residents need a receptionist with a booking system?" Before I came to any conclusions, Leanne was knocking on the door of room 315. A man in his 50s, maybe his 60s, opened the door. He was wearing the purple robes that marked him out as an integrator. "Hello, Leanne. Thank you for bringing Mary here." "My pleasure, Integrator Clark," Leanne replied. "Is there anything else I can do for you?" "No, thank you. That will be all." "Of course," Leanne said, bowing. She smiled encouragingly at me as she turned and left. "Please, Mary, come in," Clark said. "Thank you." Clark moved to the side to allow me to enter the room, very similar to the one I was staying in. The comfortable armchairs were the same look and style, though they had been placed directly opposite each other. Sarah was sitting in the chair facing the door, a hesitant smile on her face. I grinned back at her. "Hey, Sarah." "Hey." I sat down in the chair opposite Sarah, but was dismayed to see Clark take a seat off to my right, perched on the edge of the bed. "Can we have some privacy?" I asked him. "Mary, don't be rude," Sarah said. "I'm not. I just wanted to chat to you without someone eavesdropping on us." "Integrator Clark isn't eavesdropping. I asked him to be here." "What? Why?" Sarah looked towards Integrator Clark, the same way she would look towards our mother when I'd said something outrageous in an argument, a quick glance to bolster her confidence that she was right. I caught the reassuring smile he gave Sarah. "Integrator Clark has helped me realise the potential I have to help the Institute succeed in our mission. We don't want this meeting to jeopardise that." "How the fu—" I stopped suddenly when I saw Sarah visibly recoil from me. "Sarah, I just wanted to see you. All of us are worried about you. No one in the family has heard from you in months." "I'm fine. None of you need to worry about me. You ran off and joined this institute without a word to anyone. How are we not going to worry? Without a word? Are you serious?" "You didn't talk to me about it." I tried so often, but you were never free. Always too busy with work, that stupid YouTube channel." "It's not stupid." Sarah glowered at me from across the small table. I took a deep breath. "Sorry. Habit, I guess. Used to drive Mom wild." "You always had to have the last word." "Yeah. I'm working on it with my therapist." "You see a therapist? Since when?" "Since you came here." "Why did that make you get a therapist?" "Because I blamed myself for not being there for you, for not understanding what you were going through." "Guess I was right." We sat in uncomfortable silence for a while, made worse by the silent but attentive presence of the integrator. I ignored him and his judgment. I don't have the channel anymore. I moved to an investigative news channel instead. Didn't it work out? I was doing okay, got some sponsors, but it was never going to get me in here to see you, so I switched. Pays better though, right? Way worse. Sarah frowned and tilted her head to the side, so familiar a pose that I smiled. What are you smiling about? She asked me. Nothing, just happy to see you again. You too, she said with a slight smile. I know I've been a useless sister, and it's all too late, but can we have the talk you wanted a year ago now? What happened? Sarah sighed. It doesn't matter now. It does to me. Please. What for? Please. Okay, fine. What do you want to know? I know breaking up with Claire was hard on you, but I thought you were doing okay. I was. As well as I could be having to stay with Mum and Dad. That was probably the hardest part. I just couldn't. I can't even imagine it. They weren't so bad. Not really. It was being away from all the friends I'd made in New York. Not having our Sunday meetups. Being back in a sleepy town where no one understood me. That sucked. And I couldn't talk to Mum and Dad about my breakup. You know how they are. I thought they liked Claire. Sarah shrugged. Every time I mentioned her or the breakup, they would change the subject. I gave up trying. I can't believe them. Why didn't you tell me? I trailed off. Sorry. That wasn't the worst part. Claire has a child now. What? I thought she didn't want children. Apparently she did. She posted a ton of photos with her newborn daughter, saying how it's a dream come true and how her boyfriend was the best. She just didn't want one with me. The catch in Sarah's voice at the end felt like a gut punch to me. I reached out and took her hands in my own, squeezing them in a belated show of empathy and support. She grasped my hands in return, briefly squeezing them before gently disengaging and placing her hands in her lap, beneath the desk and out of reach. I awkwardly slid my hands back to my own lap, leaning back in the chair. Screw her. You can find someone way better. No, I can't. She was perfect for me, but I drove her away, pushing too hard for us to have a child together. I know how much you loved her, but she wasn't perfect if she didn't want a child with you. She didn't want to go through IVF or adoption. If I'd just let go of the child issue, we'd still be together. But you've always wanted children. You shouldn't have to give up wanting a child just to stay with someone. It wouldn't have been a problem if I was a man. You don't need to be a man. You'll find a good woman who is happy to use IVF to have a child with you. Claire loved me more than anyone else ever will, and she didn't want to. No one is ever going to. They will. No, they won't, Sarah said more calmly. But that's fine. I found another way to contribute to society, to humanity. So you're going to give up your dream of motherhood for this stupid nonsense about aliens? That's crazy. You gave up on your dream of a YouTube channel just to come and have a chat with me? That's crazier. No, it's not. Rescuing you from this dumb cult is more important than anything. It's not a cult. Oh, did the conduit tell you to believe that when you gave him all your money? That's so typical of you. You always criticise what I believe. Only when it's bad for you, like a damn cult. It's not a cult. I can't believe you came all the way here just to... Sarah's trademark oncoming tirade was interrupted by Clark, who stood next to her, one hand on her shoulder, as he simply said, Sarah, in a calm but commanding voice. Sarah immediately stopped as he spoke, an astonishing sight to someone who had witnessed her lengthy, unstoppable rants in the past. Perhaps this was a mistake, Clark said. Sarah stared directly at me, the flush of anger slowly fading from her cheeks as mine grew redder. This has got nothing to do with you. Stay out of it, I yelled. Sarah's well-being is the business of her whole family here at the Institute. You're not her family, I am. She needs to come back with me to the people that love her. This is my family, Sarah said quietly. No, it isn't. These people are taking advantage of you. How can you trust them over your own flesh and blood? They are always there to help, to talk to. We're all working towards the same goal, and it's so important. Nothing is going to have a more profound effect on humanity than proving our species to the Council. No, can't you see you've been brainwashed? Sarah, please, come back with me. Leave with me. I can help you. We can get you through this. Please. I knew you wouldn't understand. I think that's enough, Clark said. Sarah nodded and stood, Clark draping an arm over her shoulders as he escorted her to the door. I sat, stunned at how badly that had gone. I'd walked through this conversation 100 times in my mind, and yet I'd not predicted that I'd act like a child, arguing with their sibling in any of them. I know I'd make a great aunt, I said as the door opened. What? Sarah said. You'll be a great mum, and I'll be a cool aunt. I know it will happen. I turned round in my seat to look towards the door. Sarah stared at me for a drawn-out moment before being gently steered out of the room by Clark, leaving me with a knot in my stomach. Tears formed in my eyes as I turned my unseeing gaze back to the table, staring down as I tried to process what had happened. Miss Wheeler, are you ready to return to your room? Said my guard from behind me, shocking me back to reality. I need some fresh air, I said shakily as I wiped at my eyes. Of course, I can escort you around the grounds. I don't need a guided tour, I need space. Of course, Miss Wheeler, that is not a problem. I stood up sharply, striding towards the door with a newfound determination. I yanked it open, narrowly avoiding hitting myself in the face, and left the room, heading for the elevator. I walked as quickly as I could without running, in the hopes that I'd have the satisfaction of closing the door on his impassive face as I escaped. He wasn't so easy to outwit, comfortably matching my pace, and entering the elevator no more than a step behind me. Strange idea of space. On a whim, I decided to head towards the Assembly Hall building once I'd left the hotel reception. Now that there was open space of a sort around me, my shadow detached himself, lagging about 25 feet behind me. Even though I was still clearly under surveillance, I felt freer than I had since arriving at this prison camp. I skirted around the edge of the building and saw the lake, glinting in the sunlight. I thought I could see the tops of some buildings, which would have to be the hydroelectric plant Thomas spoke about last night, though from my high vantage point I couldn't be sure. Too far, I thought. To my right were more fields of hemp, to the left the forest where the Integrators had their hideaways. As children, Sarah and I had loved going to the forests close to our home, so with everything that had just happened, I didn't even make a conscious choice to leave the ordered pathways for the rough dirt paths leading into the forest. I replayed my conversation with Sarah through in my mind. Something about it felt odd to me, but I couldn't quite pin down what it was that had unsettled me, beyond the obvious disaster that it had turned into. Think like a reporter. I went back to the beginning, analysing each answer Sarah had given me. Was it different to how she would usually speak? Were there any reactions that stood out as strange to me, who had known her whole life? Most of the conversation unfortunately sounded exactly the same as our usual bickering, despite the efforts of my therapist. Even that look at Clark was entirely Sarah-like. She would look at Claire like that too after they had moved in together. It wasn't surprising that she had transferred that need for reassurance to another authority figure, though I was a little surprised that he seemed to hold enough power over her that she would immediately stop when she was on the verge of one of her tirades. One reaction at a time, I chided myself. That's when I realised what had seemed so out of place. It was her calmness when she had insisted that she was with her family in the Institute. Such a cold thing to say to a sister. Yet she had said it without anger, without malice, just with total acceptance. These bastards had brainwashed her. They had turned Sarah against her own family, supplanted us and restricted her access to us. Classic cult manipulation tactics. They had isolated her from the people that had her best interests at heart. Jarvisson and Clark had taken advantage of her, sold her a ridiculous lie about benevolent alien races to provide meaning to her life, and fleeced her for everything she owned when she finally trusted them. They were evil people preying on the vulnerable, and for what? Money? No, Jarvisson already had more than he could ever need. It was power that he wanted, power and adulation. He wanted it so much that he would spend hundreds of millions of dollars and ruin the lives of hundreds of people to get it, silencing anyone that came to their senses and escaped his cult. I've got work to do. I stopped and leaned against a tree, slowly sinking down to a crouch, hands over my eyes, as if covering more tears, shaking my hair to get as much as possible in front of my face. Hoping that my guard was too far away to see my face properly, I took stock of my surroundings. Now that I was no longer lost in my own thoughts, I could see that this was the tidiest, best-kept forest I'd ever seen. It wasn't artificial. The tree felt natural against my back, and the ground around me had the usual cover of twigs, leaves and dirt as any other. The path, though, was not typical. It was completely free from any forest debris, with clear drainage ditches on both sides. The hard-packed dirt put some tarmac roads to shame. It must take a significant amount of ongoing effort to keep it so pristine. There were also no saplings amongst the large trees, no noticeable weeds in the small area I could see through hair and spread out hands. It was controlled nature, just like the fields, just like the lake. I peered towards my shadow, hoping for a moment of distraction to gain some distance on him, maybe even slip unnoticed into the tree line. He was looking directly at me, closer than before, perhaps 15 feet away now that we were in the forest. Too professional to miss the potential for flight. Damn it. The chances of any time to myself were non-existent. No doubt the reason that Jarvisson felt confident enough to invite 3 journalists that were looking to expose him. Polite as all the automated guards were, I had no doubt that they would do whatever was required of them to stop any of Jarvisson's secrets from being discovered. I stayed in my crouch for a minute or so, long enough to sell the lie, before I stood back up, wiping imaginary tears from my eyes and straightening my hair. Being out in the open air was a welcome change from the silent room I'd have to return to, so I resolved to explore a little more. I wandered along the dirt path, picking a route at random whenever the path split, all the while racking my brains for a way to rid myself of this constant surveillance. Michael and Natasha want to investigate as much as I do. There must be a way for us to work together. Could we split the attention on us somehow? Try as I might, I couldn't even figure out when we could get together and plot without someone at the Institute listening in. We were also running out of time. We had one more night here and a handful of hours in the morning. My flight home was at 2 p.m, so I would be out of here before 10 a.m. It had to be tonight, so we had to talk soon. I needed to head back, find out where Natasha and Michael were, and see if I could get this rough outline of a plan moving. I tried to work out what time it was, but couldn't quite make out the position of the sun through the trees. I was starting to feel a little hungry, and with nothing else to go on, I assumed it was getting close to lunchtime. As long as Jarvisson didn't join us at the table, we might have the opportunity to scheme. Alyssa and Satish were going to be a problem, though. They were on Jarvisson's team before they had arrived, and I felt sure that the attention they'd been given had only strengthened their allegiance. I wouldn't be surprised if they stayed. Thanks to my random wanderings, I also had no idea how to get back. Shame I don't have a guide, isn't it? Hey, do you know the way back? I asked. That way, Miss Wheeler, he replied, pointing along the track. And then take the first left. Cool, thanks. I followed his instructions, heading off down the path, with him trailing me several feet back. I kept to my previous pace, not wanting to show any signs of purpose now that I had one. I'd stop occasionally to place my hands on a tree or slow down to brush my hands through leaves. Whenever we arrived at another crossroads, my guard would call out directions. "Right here, Miss Wheeler." I turned right and quickly noticed that this path was different. There was a clearing on the left, shielded by a single row of trees. I could make out a wooden building through the trees, too small to be used for anything bar storing tools. As I walked along the road, a modest 2-story house became visible. It was made of the same materials as the hotels, the hemp bricks Leon had been so enamoured with during her TED talk, giving it a cold, corporate look. This must be an integrator home. The privileges of a purple robe. I sped up a little, eager to see the front of the house, heading towards another dirt road junction. "Left at the end, Miss Wheeler." I waved my hand in response. The house was set back a little from the road, so the front of the house was visible through the trees before I reached the left turn. I slowed my walk once again, then stopped when I saw what was happening at the door to the house. Sarah stood on the small path leading to the door, crying, as Clark stood at the threshold of the house, slowly closing the door. Sarah, head down, walked back to the main road and turned right, disappearing into the forest. What the hell was happening in there? Too many possibilities ran through my head, none of them good. I had to get Sarah out of this place and bring Clark and Jarvisson to justice. I had to. "Are you okay, Miss Wheeler?" my guard said to me, no more than a couple of feet away. "Ah!" "My apologies. Are you okay?" "Apart from you nearly giving me a heart attack, you mean?" "Yes, I'm fine." "We're almost back to your accommodation. Just left here." "Great. Hey, what building is this?" "This is Integrator Clark's residence." "Why does he get a place of his own?" "All of the integrators need a space to consult with members when they are in need of guidance. Providing them with their own space provides a welcoming environment in which to learn." "What qualifies Clark to do that exactly?" "Integrator Clark has been with the Institute from the very beginning. He understands the goals of the Institute and how best to achieve them." Stupid of me to think I'd get any useful information from one of the Institute militia. Rather than waste time on a conversation that would yield little more than Institute propaganda, I headed down the road and took a left. As promised, it quickly led out of the forest, emerging close to my hotel building. I no longer had the privilege of space. My shadow had reattached himself to within a couple of feet, but it didn't matter. The current plan was to push my luck and see if I could talk to Michael in his room. That plan crumbled as soon as I entered the reception area. Michael and Natasha were sitting on the comma-shaped sofas, while Satish paced back and forth in front of them, talking excitedly. 2 large men stood near the elevators. "Only 2? Does Jarvisson trust Satish? Can I use that?" Both men glanced towards me and my escort, but I didn't catch any nods of acknowledgement. Natasha noticed me, extricating herself from whatever technology conversation that had Satish so excited, and joined me at the entrance. "How did the meeting with your sister go?" she asked me. "Bad. Very bad." "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Do you want to talk about it?" I nodded, then shot a look at my guard. "Can we have a bit of privacy, please?" Natasha asked the guard. "Of course," he answered. He left my side, walked a few feet to the reception desk, and stood guard at the wall. Natasha shook her head. "Arsehole," she said, not very quietly. "Tell me what happened." I relayed the basics of the conversation to her. How we had argued, how Clark had ended the conversation and taken her away. I talked about the guilt that I felt because, thanks to me prioritising my job over my sister, she had joined the Institute. "You can't blame yourself for losing your temper. If anything, it showed Sarah just how much she means to you," Natasha told me. "Yeah, I guess. Doesn't help her though, does it?" "Nothing you can say would make her leave," Natasha said quietly. Then what was the point of coming here? I whispered. You did what you could. People do leave the Institute, don't forget that. I nodded, though I held no real hope that Sarah would be leaving of her own accord. The Institute had its claws in her too deep. We need to do more, I whispered. Natasha nodded but didn't reply. Instead, she simply hugged me, then led me over to Michael and Satish. Mary, are you okay? Michael asked as I sat down next to Natasha. He had a faint sheen of sweat covering his face. Yeah. The meeting didn't go as planned, Natasha told him. Ah, I see. My sympathies. Thank you. Hey, Satish. Hey, Mary. I'm sorry to hear that too. Families can be tough. How was the tour? I asked him. Amazing. Just amazing. Did you know the solar cells here have 50% more efficiency than standard panels? And the hydroelectric plant produces enough electricity to power double the tech they use here. I didn't. That's very impressive. Even better, my latest product will smooth out the ups and downs of natural energy production. No need to switch everything off at night. That sounds great, Satish. Jarvisson is committed to funding further development with a firm commitment to integrating the product into their setup once the tech has been proven. Cool, I said, unenthusiastically. Very cool, he replied, oblivious to my tone. What about you two? Did you enjoy the tour? I asked. It was very interesting, Michael said. Our guide was more forthcoming about the technical details than I was expecting. There's a lot of cutting-edge technology being used in the Institute. And thanks to Satish, Natasha said, smiling at Satish, I have a good idea of how much money might have been spent. Those were estimates, of course. Some of it was new to me, Satish replied. I'm sure, with your knowledge of the tech industry, you weren't too far from the true cost. It's hard to say without knowing the specific components, but I can give a ballpark figure for stuff I don't know. Like those solar cells. I don't know how they have achieved such a jump in output. Is it too confidential to ask how your product will help the Institute? Michael said. I can't say too much, of course, Satish replied, but it's a proprietary battery system that not only improves capacity, but reduces the rare element requirements. Natasha leaned towards me while Satish gave the elevator pitch for his new batteries to Michael. I added it up as I went along. Billions have been spent here. Jarvisson must be funneling money from other sources to run this place. How? I don't know, but I do know what companies I need to look into to trace the money. We need to talk with Michael. I want to ditch our bodyguards. Natasha nodded, and we rejoined the tech conversation until we were called for lunch. The four of us were escorted to the main hall where we met Alyssa, sitting alone at our customary table. She waved enthusiastically as she spotted us entering the main hall. I waved back. As we took our seats, I took notice of a number of guards escorting our party of 5. There were 3 guards, 2 at the entrance and 1 that had followed us to the edge of the stage. Both Satish and Alyssa had apparently proven themselves trustworthy enough to Jarvisson to no longer warrant a personal chaperone, though I wondered how much leeway they were really being given. The Institute had proven its ability to keep tabs on us when they had intercepted Michael within seconds of him leaving his room last night, so I doubted that Alyssa and Satish were completely free from surveillance, however strong their allegiance was. Hey guys, Alyssa said. I had the best talk with Thomas. That's lovely, Natasha said. Did you get the answers you needed? You bet. Thomas was very open and honest with me. He really opened up, you know? He was like that with me too, Satish interjected, drawing a brief frown from Alyssa. He was really into my new development. Cool, Alyssa answered flatly. Though our talk was personal, not just business. We really connected, just like the alien council needs to see. Did you learn much about this council? Natasha asked before Satish could respond. So much. They look after hundreds of planets, you know. Ours is like the 10th or 11th primitive civilization they have contacted. And they don't talk to just anyone. They have to see something special to introduce themselves. Natasha nodded along as Alyssa spoke, outwardly appearing to take everything completely seriously. Do we know how well the Institute is doing in convincing the council to help us? Natasha asked. Thomas told me that he... Oh, I don't know if I should say. It might be, seriously confidential. If Thomas confided in you, then don't feel like you have to tell us, Natasha said. I was only wondering if we were on the right track. Alyssa smiled. We are. There is still a lot of work to be done, but they approve of what we are doing here. We? I thought. That's good to know, Natasha said with a smile. I've got so much material for the podcast, but better than that, Thomas even said he'd invite me onto the main Institute podcast. Not as a permanent member, obviously, but as a guest. Today was huge for my channel, huge. I'm really happy for you, I said, masking my anger that yet another young, impressionable person had been hoodwinked by Jarvisson's lies. The sooner we bring this whole place down, the fewer people like Alyssa, like Sarah, will have their lives ruined. Michael muttered some vaguely positive comments to Alyssa as a young man in white arrived at our table. Good afternoon. We have 2 dishes to choose from today. Roasted vegetables on toasted bread or a vegetable couscous. He quickly took our orders and disappeared off stage just as a handful of integrators arrived. Fortunately, Clark wasn't among them. I would have lost it if he'd brazenly walked past me after what I'd seen earlier. They sat at a nearby table without acknowledging any of us. I took a closer look at this group that appeared to keep the rest of the Institute in check. These 5 purple robes consisted of 3 women and 2 men, between the ages of 40 and 60 as far as I was able to judge. They seemed at ease in each other's company, and conversation was flowing, albeit a quiet one. The louder, more raucous sound of the rest of the Institute's members arriving shifted my focus away as I searched the incoming crowd for Sarah. There was no sign of her. I switched my gaze back to the integrators, futilely searching their faces for any sign that they were as manipulative and controlling as Clark had been. One of the men, a tall, slim man with greying around his temples, caught my penetrating gaze and raised an inquiring eyebrow at me. I quickly turned to Natasha, who sat beside me, pretending a sudden interest in what she was saying to Satish that I'm sure was entirely transparent to the integrator. Reduce the cost considerably, Natasha was saying. Not initially. We estimate the Institute would recoup the startup costs within 10 years, Satish answered. How would they recoup costs when they don't sell anything here? Natasha asked. Well, it's not so much make money back as, save on future costs. What future costs would they be? Michael chimed in. I'm sorry. Thomas didn't want me to discuss the costs of the Institute this way. Please, you won't tell him that I said anything, will you? Satish asked. No, of course not, Michael said. Thank you. Natasha nodded at Satish, who thanked her too, though I noted that both she and Michael had, in fact, not promised to keep it secret from the rest of the world, only from Jarvisson. Doesn't Satish care about this information leaking out? Michael and Satish regaled the table with stories of the technical innovations they had seen on their tour, and their potential uses while we ate, though I was sure they were the only 2 that cared. Natasha had been on the tour. Alyssa looked a little bored, and I just wanted to formulate a plan with Natasha and Michael to bring this place down. The waste of time and misplaced praise grated on me. Patience, Natasha whispered to me. I took a deep breath and slowly let it out, hoping it would draw out some of my frustration. I feigned interest in the conversation, holding tightly to the ever-diminishing core of patience I still owned. Hey, Thomas, Alyssa called out. Hey, Alyssa. Hey, everyone. How was lunch? Jarvisson said as he swept onto the stage, drawing nods from the group of integrators. Amazing, Alyssa said. I'm glad you liked the food, Alyssa. I wanted to talk to you all about your plans for the rest of the day. We have a few options. Satish, our head of agriculture, Alina, was very interested in your new product. and would like to discuss potential benefits, if you wouldn't mind talking to her. Yes, of course, no problem. Thank you, Satish. If anyone else would like a more in-depth tour of our agricultural production after you've finished here, then you will be more than welcome. Alyssa, you mentioned to me earlier that you'd like to see our content production set up. Yeah, definitely. We are due to film a video tomorrow, and we'll be testing the setup shortly. You're welcome to join in the testing, as are you all. Wow, that's amazing, yeah? Wonderful. It will be a valuable learning experience for both of us, I'm sure. There is also the opportunity to sit in on one of our training courses. I believe it's electrical car maintenance this afternoon. I didn't know you provided training, Michael said. We could not be a sustainable community if we didn't have the ability to maintain and repair our own equipment. It's imperative that we use every resource to its fullest extent, given the huge environmental impact of manufacturing. It's not that sustainable if you have to buy and ship all of your technology here, is it? Natasha asked. While it is true that the initial manufacturing and importation of our equipment is outside of our control, the aim of the Institute isn't to demonstrate that each individual area can be self-sufficient. Our mission is to show that the Earth, as a whole, can live within its means, provided we design and build our tools to last as long as possible and be easily repairable. That's a key feature in all the equipment our friends provide us. You must be receiving different tech than we are, I said. None of our stuff is repairable. We do make special requests, that's true, Jarvisson smiled. Custom-made, cutting-edge technology? That must cost you a fortune, Natasha said. The Institute has many people that believe in our mission and are willing to make changes to their products for us. It's personally very encouraging and humbling just how many supporters we have. It gives me great confidence that the Council will see the potential of humanity and intervene on our behalf. I'm sure we will prove ourselves, Alyssa said. I am too, Alyssa. If we find issues with the changes both we and our partners have made to their products, we simply work through them. You are making changes to the tech here? Michael asked. Yes. We have a number of highly qualified people at the Institute that work on the hydroelectric plant and in food production. They share their knowledge with any Institute members that are interested in learning. Everyone is encouraged to share their ideas for improvements. I think anyone in the tech industry knows that nothing quite works out as expected when it's used in the real world. If only it did, said Satish. Jarvisson nodded towards Satish as he continued. That real-world experience is crucial in refining how the tech is made and deployed. That's why the Institute is so important to humanity's progress. Free testing and advertising. No wonder the tech firms are happy to donate to Jarvisson. And I assume that all of your feedback gets incorporated into a revised product, Michael asked. It is shared with our partners, though how they use the information we provide is entirely out of our hands. Our priority is to build a sustainable society to prove ourselves to the Council. Technological progress will speed up with their help once they have welcomed us into the greater community. At that point, the small steps we incorporate here will hold far less importance. Until then, each improvement is crucial, like your invention, Satish. I can't wait to see what the Council will show us. Have they told you anything about their tech? Said Satish. I am not able to divulge the content of my conversations with the Council, Satish. Even the tiny details that I've been able to piece together could disrupt the natural progress of our development, causing us to chase vague ideas of technology that we have no idea how to reach. It is far better to put our trust in innovative leaders like you to push the boundaries of our knowledge. I won't let you down, Thomas, Satish said. I know you won't, Satish. A woman in blue robes approached our table, in the conversational lull that Satish's heartfelt pledge of allegiance had caused. She was shorter than me, a little younger, and, most surprisingly, was the first person I'd seen in the Institute that wore makeup. Ah, Amira, this is Alyssa. Alyssa, this is Amira, our social media coordinator. She will be setting up for tomorrow's video. Hey, Amira. Hey, Alyssa. Love your podcast. Wow, really? I've listened to every single one. Want to go see our setup? So much. Does anyone else want to see? I would like to, please, said Natasha. Sure. Anyone else? I'd like to sit in on the training course, Michael said. Mary? Asked Jarvisson. I needed to talk to Michael to form a plan, and the training course might give us the opportunity to speak without eavesdroppers. The training course sounds interesting. I'm thinking of getting an electric car myself. Might be cool to be able to fix it if something goes wrong. That's settled then. Satish, Rachel is outside waiting to take you to see Alina. Alyssa, Natasha, I'll leave you in the capable hands of Amira. Mary, Michael, if you follow Matteo and James, they will take you to the lesson. Jarvisson gestured to the two guards that had been tailing us since last night. It felt strange to think that these impassive presences had names. It made their lack of emotion and empathy somehow feel less human, not more. Michael, Satish and I left the main hall together. Outside, Rachel was waiting in one of the golf cart vehicles. Satish jumped in and they sped off along the road leading into the fields. James and Matteo joined Michael and I outside. Follow us, Matteo commanded. We formed a compact diamond, Matteo out in front, Michael and I walking side by side, James a couple of feet behind us. As there was little chance for a private conversation, Michael and I spent the short walk discussing the benefits of self-repair. Matteo had set a quick pace, leaving Michael a little out of breath by the time we reached our destination. We had reached a cluster of half a dozen wide buildings, no taller than 7 or 8 feet. I couldn't help but think of an aircraft hangar that had mysteriously sunk down into the ground. They all had the same roller doors across most of the front of the building, and a single door on the right-hand side, though their roofs were flat rather than the curve I'd seen on hangars. Matteo led us to the leftmost mini-hangar, taking us through a door to a far larger space than I was expecting. A ramp led down several feet into an impressively furnished workshop, divided up into 3 sections. Each area was maybe 20-25 feet across, enclosed by a wall of workbenches and drawer units, as well as a more conventional desk, complete with 2 laptops and several monitors, set at the rear of the area, easily 30 feet from where Michael and I had entered. 3 white-robed Institute members, all younger than me, were gathered around one of the golf carts that Rachel drove so recklessly. They faced a blue-robed member that waved us towards the group when they spotted us. We joined the group while Matteo and James took position at the edge of this garage area. Welcome, welcome. We were just about to start. I'm Connor, and you are? Michael. Thank you for letting us join in the lesson. Mary. Hi Michael, Mary. Let's get started, shall we? The lesson was an in-depth explanation of how this golf cart worked, what might go wrong, and practical ways to fix issues that didn't involve the main battery pack. It was very clear that if that went wrong, it usually wasn't salvageable and would be handed over to another, more specialised team. The group were taking turns performing an exercise where the instructor would break the cart for us to fix under supervision. Each student needed to attach the hoist and raise the cart into the air to allow for full inspection, which was noisy enough that it allowed Michael and I to talk. In bits and pieces of snatched time, I explained to Michael the control that Clark had wielded over Sarah, the unsettling scene I'd witnessed at his home, and the need to ditch our guards to investigate further. I fully see the need to uncover some of the secrets at work here, though I'm at a loss for a way to slip away from James and Matteo. There is more surveillance here than just our friends over there. I'd barely stepped out of my room last night before I was intercepted. I know, but there must be a way to cause a diversion, for one of us to slip away. Michael, would you like to take a turn? Connor asked. Yes, of course, Michael said, adding quietly to me, I will think on it. Michael showed an aptitude for fixing the cart, isolating and correcting the manufactured fault far quicker than anyone else had, though it took more of a toll on him too. Connor stepped in to help hoist the cart back down to the floor, much to the relief of the sweating, panting Michael. Are you all right? I asked him. Yes, just a little more work than I was expecting to do, that's all. I didn't have much time to check on him, as it was my turn next. Despite my anger at the Institute and my desperation to help Sarah escape, having a clear problem to solve was welcome. I became absorbed in tracing the wires just as I'd been taught. I brought the now functioning cart to the floor with a warm glow of satisfaction that left me the second I saw Connor's blue robe. Wonderful, Mary. Please join the others and we can cover some of the mechanical issues that can affect these carts. It was getting dark by the time the lecture had finished, and I was still no closer to a plan than when it had started. How long until dinner? Michael asked James, who had flanked us as the rest of the Institute members left the garage. Not long, perhaps an hour, James answered. Would you like to join me for a walk before dinner, Mary? The hoisting process has stiffened a few muscles that would benefit from a stretch. Yes, of course, I replied, hoping that he had a plan. I've not seen the forested area yet. Is that okay? Michael asked, looking at me and James. James nodded and led us out of the garage at a quick pace that neither I nor Michael tried to match. Matteo appeared content to follow behind us, with James quickly rejoining us at a more leisurely stroll. We fell back into the diamond shape we formed on our way to the garage as we passed by the main hall, then our hotel building, entering the forest along the same path I'd exited earlier that day. We walked past Integrator8tion's home, continuing along the path that Sarah had taken earlier that day, rather than the route I had taken. Michael and I chatted about the lesson as the path turned to the right and started to descend towards the lake. I was surprised how much I had learned, I said. It's not that surprising, given our teacher. What's so special about Connor? He was heavily involved in the creation and the development of those kinds of electric vehicles. There probably isn't another person in the world that knows as much about them as he does. Why did someone like that join the Institute? We don't know if he has joined, do we? People come and go all the time, Michael said quietly. What do they get out of him teaching students? Michael shrugged, then let out a grunt of pain. Are you okay? I asked him. Sore muscles. I think I may have pulled something using that hoist. Do you want to go back? No. Nothing wrong with some fresh air and a stretch, Michael said as he took hold of his right elbow and pulled his arm across his chest, switching arms as we walked onwards. His breathing was a little laboured, I assumed from the pain, so we walked in silence for a while. There was now a very noticeable downward gradient to the path, not quite enough to warrant stairs, but enough to require a little more care. It's getting a bit steep, I said to Michael. Might be time to head back. Yes, I think you are right, Michael said between breaths. As we came to a stop, Matteo and James heel-turned to face back up the path we had taken, clearly close enough to have heard our discussion, patiently waiting for us to start moving. Let's just stop, I said to Michael. Michael was looking directly at me when he suddenly clutched his chest, a haunting look of panic in his eyes as he fell to the side, landing amongst the trees. He then started to tumble haphazardly down the slope. Michael! I screamed. James and Matteo leapt into action immediately, their army training finally benefiting their guests. They darted into the trees, Matteo managing to get in front of Michael, halting his downward progress, though just barely. Michael was a larger man, and the footing was far from secure. Even with James helping, I could see that it was going to be difficult to move Michael to a more secure position. We need a doctor, I yelled at them. Go get Integrator Clark, Matteo told me, at the house we walked past earlier. Okay. I shook myself out of the shocked paralysis from Michael's sudden collapse, sprinting back up the incline to Clark's home, all thoughts of my previous experiences with him replaced by the need to help Michael. It took forever to get back to the small house, and I felt every second slipping away. I hammered on the door when I finally reached it, too out of breath to yell. More precious time was lost before Clark opened the door. Mary, what is wrong? He asked. Michael, collapsed. Heart attack. Where? I pointed down the path I had just ran along. Where it goes down. As I had been speaking, Clark had ducked back behind the door, and I could make out the sound of objects being dragged around. He reappeared with a large duffel bag overflowing with what I assumed were medical supplies. I could see the top of an oxygen tank and what looked like a paddle from a small defibrillator. Clark yanked open a drawer to his left, pulling out a couple of needles and several small bottles, carelessly stuffing them into the top of the bag before rushing out, pulling the door shut behind him with a crunch. Out of breath, I sank to the ground, panting. I'd run as fast as I was able, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it hadn't been enough. I twisted round, the door directly behind me, and leaned backwards onto it, needing the support. As I put my full weight onto the door, it gave way behind me, and I fell backwards into Clark's house. I was barely able to grab the doorframe to stop my fall, and heard a muffled pop as my lower back hit something on the floor. I pulled myself back to a sitting position and glanced backwards. A broken vial lay scattered around the door. It must have fallen when Clark had hastily grabbed them from the drawer. The more robust metallic cap was wedged against the doorframe. It took a moment for the situation to sink in. I was in Clark's home, unguarded, unsupervised. This wasn't the way I wanted things to happen. I'd never have traded Michael's life for this opportunity, but it would have been a disservice to him if I simply left. I estimated I had 5 minutes at most, maybe less, before replacement guards would get here. I leapt up and looked around the forbidden area I now had access to. It looked so prosaic given the secrecy that had surrounded it. Cabinets full of drawers flanked the door, each drawer having a handwritten label attached that made this side of the room look like a pharmacy. Stairs led up to the left. The rest of the room contained a comfortable-looking chair at right angles to a matching sofa. A small, elegant table nestled between them, within easy reach of both. Filing cabinets flanked a writing desk on the right-hand side wall. A closed laptop lay on the desk, an open folder resting on top. A few pieces of paper lay to the side of the laptop, next to an open notebook, a work in progress that I assumed I must have interrupted. Conscious of my very limited time, I formulated my plan of action. I had no time to search the drawers or the filing cabinets, and even if I did, I risked leaving signs of my intrusion if I rifled through them. I was never going to get into the laptop, and failed logging attempts would be logged and discovered, so it was either the papers or going upstairs. On the one hand, investigating Clark's living quarters could reveal sordid secrets of his lifestyle that might prompt an official investigation. On the other hand, Sarah had left here crying, and I wasn't sure I was strong enough right now to discover any unpleasant truths. It had to be the papers. I glanced at the folder as I neared the desk, trying to get an idea of what it contained. I'm shocked to see Sarah's name on the first page. My hand shook as I carefully thumbed through a very detailed personal history of Sarah's life, including intimate details of her life with Claire, things that I didn't know and didn't need to know. I skimmed through the treasure trove of blackmail material, feeling extremely confused as I got to entries that were set out like the notes my therapist made about me, notes that I had sneaked to look at when I'd had the opportunity. What is even happening? I thought. Despite not having a watch, I knew time was ticking, so I put the folder back as close as I was able to its original state and looked at the papers on the desk. It was a therapist note about Sarah. Sarah's meeting with her sister Mary appeared to have a significant effect. The meeting was contentious, and I felt it necessary to bring it to a premature end. A parting comment from Mary prompted Sarah to speak at length in our session about her desire to become a mother, and her guilt at the conflict she feels this creates with the aims of the Institute. Further discussion around these feelings of guilt could indicate that her maternal instincts are not the main source but may instead stem from questioning the purpose of the Institute. Sarah did not seem receptive to this idea when I brought it up in our session. The next session should focus on these feelings. The thrill of hearing Sarah may have been thinking of leaving had instantly been quenched, knowing that Clark would be trying to talk her out of it. How evil to have therapists help in the brainwashing process. What therapist would be so unethical to treat unknowing patients, assuming that Clark was actually a trained therapist and not a hack fraud? I thought. I read the last unfinished paragraph of this report. Sarah displayed shock that Mary had sacrificed so much just to see her at the Institute. She contrasted this with the feeling of abandonment she had felt when her sister, for the first time in her life, hadn't provided her with comfort and support when she really needed it. There appeared to be a re-establishment of trust with Mary, based on fond recollections of childhood trials and tribulations, specifically times that Mary had protected or comforted Sarah. Sarah spoke cautiously about a possible future outside the Institute, a notable breakthrough in her treatment, which can be encouraged to help her move towards resuming her former life. Further communication with Mary is recommended, both to challenge the fiction of the Alien Council teachings and to rebuild Sarah's trust in her previous support system. Regarding training options, I was stunned, unable to fully grasp what this note was saying. Despite the time pressure, I read it through again, twice, to make sure I wasn't reading too much into Clark's words. I didn't have time to properly process what I'd just read before realising that time was short. I wasn't going to be able to investigate further, and I needed to leave. I rushed to the door, doing my best to sweep the pieces of broken vial out onto the forest floor before shutting the door behind me. I sat on the ground, my back against the now solidly closed door, eyes shut. Could this really be true? Are they really trying to help people that are drawn in by their stories of aliens? Clark had called the Alien Council a fiction, in a document that the Institute would never expect to fall into the hands of an outsider. There was no reason to lie. Everything I had thought about the Institute had suddenly been upended. It was disorienting. Is this why I'd been invited? To help Sarah's treatment? Maybe Natasha had been right about getting angry during our meeting, being a positive. Ms. Wheeler? It was Robbie the robot come to check up on me. Make sure I wasn't up to any journalistic mischief. Too late, Rob, I thought to myself before saying, Hey, Mr. Muller has been taken to our medical facility and is stable. I had a pang of guilt as I remembered why I was sitting here. I'd completely forgotten about Michael. Oh, thank God. Will he be all right? I believe the prognosis is positive. Are you able to return to your room? Yes, I'm fine. I stood up and followed Robert as he led the way back to the hotel building, glad to have a guide I could passively follow, while my mind raced with a host of questions. I needed time to think things through. I entered the reception area of the hotel to find Natasha, Satish and Alyssa sitting on the comma-shaped sofas, talking quietly. As I walked over to join them, Alyssa and Natasha both stood to give me a hug. We heard what happened to poor Michael, Alyssa said. Have you heard anything? Natasha said. Not much, just that he is stable, I replied. They have excellent medical care here, Satish said. I'm sure he will be fine. I hope so. Was it awful to see? Alyssa asked. It was shocking. We were just talking and then he looked scared and dropped to the floor. I just ran to get help. What help? Said Alyssa. One of the integrators, Clark. I'd passed this house earlier, so I knew where it was when Matteo told me to get him. I ran as fast as I could, but what if I was too slow? Noticing my tears, Natasha put an arm around my shoulders and gently sat me down. I'm surprised this Matteo didn't get help himself. Surely it's their responsibility to look after their guests, Satish said. He couldn't. Michael was falling down the slope. Both Matteo and James had to rush in and stop him. Alyssa gasped. He was falling. That's awful, she said. Then you did the best thing you could have done in a terrible situation. Probably saving Michael's life, Natasha said. Yes, I agree. Decisive action in these situations is vital. And it sounds like you acted as quickly as possible, Satish said. Alyssa reached out and gently held my hands in hers. You did great, she said. These reassurances did make me feel better about my actions, despite the lingering worry that I'd not done enough. We spent a few minutes quietly talking about Michael and what this meant for our visit here, going round and round in circles, lacking any information to come to any conclusions. I need to shower and change, I said, looking down at the dust and dirt on my jeans and feeling sweaty from the exertion and stress of the past hour. "Of course," said Natasha. "I'd recommend a bath. You need to relax. Take some time for yourself." "Good plan," I said. I stood up slowly, Natasha and Alyssa touching my side supportively. "Thanks, guys." "You're welcome," said Natasha. "We got you," said Alyssa, standing and hugging me. Satish reached out, holding my bicep awkwardly and squeezing gently. "Let us know if you need anything," he said. "Thanks, Satish. Catch you later, okay?" As I walked over to the elevators, Robert lifted himself off the wall and joined me. I didn't have the energy to object. He accompanied me to my door, speaking as I swung it open. "You did well, Miss Wheeler. As well as anyone could." I stood in shock at this show of humanity as Robert abruptly turned away and walked back down the corridor towards the elevator. Whether it was more meaningful coming from a professional soldier or having heard it multiple times, it made me feel better about my actions. Once I was soaking in the hot bath full of my remaining bath salts, that guilt and worry eased, no longer dominating my thoughts. I focused instead on what was really going on in the Institute and why each of us had been invited, hoping that taking things one step at a time would answer my biggest question. Were they really trying to help their members and not take advantage of them? Including Satish in the group was easy to understand. His battery technology provided the Institute with a clear benefit, not to mention a potentially lucrative business opportunity for Jarvisson. Even if the Institute was the evil cult that I thought it was an hour ago, Satish's presence posed no risks, given his adoration of Jarvisson. Alyssa was purely positive PR for the Institute, one that could be completely discredited if she spoke against them in any way. She would return to her podcast, spreading the lies about aliens with an even greater zeal to those that wanted to believe. Michael and Natasha's inclusion was more difficult to understand. What would Jarvisson and the Institute have gained from having them snoop around their haven? Was it simply to show the outside world an openness that didn't exist, to allay suspicion around their finances? Was that even necessary? That led me to my invitation. I wondered if it had been solely for Sarah's benefit. Clark's notes seemed unambiguous. He was a therapist working with Sarah to help her rebuild her sense of self and purpose, with the express aim of getting her to leave. He didn't believe in aliens, despite Jarvisson telling the group that each Integr8 had helped create the Institute. Doesn't that mean Jarvisson doesn't believe it either? I realised that none of the guards had indicated any belief in the aliens, just in the purpose of the Institute. Was that purpose helping those people that were vulnerable to being ensnared by a cult, by providing a fake cult to join that would attempt to cure them of wanting to be in a cult? Maybe the reason ex-cult members don't talk about the Institute isn't fear, but gratitude? I damped down the rise in excitement I felt that Sarah might return to us, the old Sarah, before the breakup. I just couldn't be sure that Clark wasn't being duped by Jarvisson. There was always the possibility that more was going on here out of my view, restricted as it had been. My experience as an investigative journalist had taught me a valuable lesson. Situations were usually more complicated than we would like. Even if the Institute might be trying to help people like Sarah, it doesn't mean they were all sweetness and light. Providing people with therapy without their consent was unethical and intrusive. Regardless of any intent, some of the Institute members had been effectively brainwashed, like Leanne. Additionally, Jarvisson's business colleagues and friends absolutely benefited financially from the free PR and real-world testing that went on here. They had free QR testers that actually paid to be there. I still couldn't be sure that the Institute was working in the best interests of its members. I realised that the bath water had gone cold when I started to shiver, finally prompting me to stop trying to solve this mystery and get out of the bath. I wrapped myself in a towel, then lay on the bed, pulling the blankets over me to warm myself up. My stomach used this distraction to insist that I was hungry, a message it must have been trying to get through to me for a while, given just how hungry I felt. Groaning and still a little cold, I rolled out of bed, switched the light on and started to get dressed, hoping that food was still being served. I was just about ready to leave when there was a sharp knock on the door. "Yes?" I said. "Miss Wheeler, it's Matteo. I have food for you." "Okay, great." Matteo stood outside the door, holding a wooden tray with an upturned plate, covering another plate, a jug of water and a coffee. He walked in without invitation, placing the tray on the small table. "Thanks. Any news on Michael?" I asked. "I believe he is recovering well." "Will I be able to see him?" "I will ask. Thank you." Matteo left as abruptly as he had entered the room. "Good chat," I said out loud. I sat down at the table, taking the top plate off to find a mushroom risotto that was still warm, as was the coffee. An image formed of Matteo running from the assembly hall like a pizza delivery employee, rushing to meet the 30-minute deadline to ensure the pizza was still warm, then slowing down and catching his breath to maintain that stoic, robotic vibe when he got to my room. For some reason, I found this hilarious, and I ended up laughing hard enough to bring tears to my eyes. Maybe at the absurd image, maybe just to release some of the stress and tension the last couple of days had heaped on me. Whatever the reason, I felt a little better. I demolished the risotto and water, but nursed my coffee, cradling and sipping it slowly, enjoying the peace and quiet, both in the room and, temporarily, in my mind. That peace ended with the last sips of coffee. I felt tired but energised at the same time. Maybe late-night coffee wasn't the best plan. I wished there was a way to talk to Natasha. I wanted her take on the Institute. She had toured a bigger part of the compound than I had, poked into more metaphorical corners than me, and was looking at it from a very different angle. She may have seen something that would confirm or disprove my theories. I had to hope that we would be leaving the Institute at the same time tomorrow, so we could talk at the airport when no one else would be listening. I never once considered leaving my room to go talk to her. Eventually, my tiredness overcame my caffeine intake, and I fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. I was woken by the phone ringing. As groggy as I had felt the day before, I answered. Yeah, hello? Good morning, Miss Wheeler. You have an hour before you need to leave for the airport. What? An hour? What time is it? It's 9 a.m. We are bringing breakfast to you shortly, so please don't worry. There is plenty of time. Okay, sure, thanks. My brain hadn't gotten up to full speed, so it didn't occur to me at that point to ask why they hadn't woken me up earlier, and why they hadn't given me the chance to see the others at breakfast. The receptionist had already hung up, so I hauled myself out of bed and jumped straight into the shower, feeling rushed. I was out of the shower and dressed when my breakfast arrived with a knock. Come in. The door opened to reveal Jarvisson himself, standing with the same looking tray Matteo had brought me last night. Oh, hey, I said. Good morning, Mary. A breakfast burrito and a coffee for you before you go. Thanks, appreciate that. I took a seat at the table to eat and was surprised to see Jarvisson join me. I wanted to see how you were feeling, and let you know that Michael had a good night's rest. Our doctors are pleased with his progress. Seriously, he's all right? I wouldn't say that. He's just suffered a heart attack and will need to spend a few more days in bed under observation. However, the doctors are optimistic that he will recover, thanks in no small part to your calmness in a stressful situation. I didn't feel calm. Yet you got Michael the help he needed very quickly, without panicking. That's what counts. I guess so, as long as he's going to be all right. And how are you? A bit freaked out, I said between bites of burrito. It doesn't seem real, you know? Yes, I do. These things take time to process. Talking of time, I know it might feel a little rushed right now, but we thought it best to let you rest as long as you needed this morning. A lot happened yesterday, and we expected you to struggle to get to sleep. Yeah, it took a minute. Please don't worry about the time. There is more than enough for you to make your flight, and arrangements can be made, even in the unlikely event that you do miss your flight. Thanks. One last thing before I let you go. Sarah has expressed an interest in maintaining contact with you after you leave. I just stared at him, the cup of coffee halfway to my mouth. It will be via our shared email address, as we don't have individual member accounts, though I can promise you that there will be no interference with any of the messages sent between the two of you. I suspect I know the answer, but I wanted to ask you in person if you'd like to keep in touch with Sarah via email. Clark had suggested that Sarah and I should remain in contact for Sarah's benefit, to help her leave the Institute. Any doubts I had about the aims of the Institute, at least towards their members, disappeared. I had noticed that Jarvisson hadn't said the emails wouldn't be read by anyone else, but I didn't care. Clark could read everything Sarah and I had ever written to each other if it helped him to help Sarah. Yes, I'd love to. I thought as much. I'll let her know. Jarvisson's broad smile seemed genuine to me as he stood and reached out to shake my hand. That felt like congratulations on a job well done, I thought as we shook hands. Lovely to have met you, Mary. Have a safe trip home, and be well. Thanks, you too, I said automatically. Jarvisson left me to finish my breakfast and packing. It was a shorter process than I had feared, as I'd packed very little for the 2-day trip. I was sitting on the bed when the knock at the door came to tell me it was time to leave. I opened the door to see Rachel waiting to ferry me back to the gatehouse via the golf carts. Are you ready? She asked me. Yeah, all good. I followed her out of the hotel building, getting into one of the carts parked haphazardly outside. Where are the others? Did they leave already? I asked as we drove off. Natasha left an hour ago. Satish and Alyssa have extended their stay. I don't know where they are. Michael is in the infirmary, recovering well. Let them know I said goodbye, okay? I will. The conversation lapsed, partly because I didn't really have anything to say to Rachel, and partly because she drove so fast that I really didn't want to distract her. A couple of minutes later we had zipped through the fields, my hands gripping the frame tightly the entire time, and had arrived at the gatehouse. Thanks for the lift. You're welcome. Goodbye, Mary. Bye, Rachel. I wasn't required to go through the whole security process this time, which surprised me. Are they that confident I'm not smuggling anything out? Actually, I would be too. I was let through a security door that bypassed the scanner and was finally reunited with my phone. I turned it on, but the battery had died. Not surprising, as it was low when it went into the storage box 2 days ago. I slipped it into my bag along with my purse and passport, realising that I hadn't brought a charger with me. I made a mental note to buy one at the airport. A new ex-army member was waiting outside the main gate. Good morning, Miss Wheeler. I'm Jordan. I'll be driving you to the airport. Hey, Jordan. Are we going to be on time? We have time to spare, Miss Wheeler. Please, he said as he waved me towards the rear doors of the same make of electric car I'd arrived in. I climbed in and made myself comfortable. Wordlessly, Jordan sat in the driver's seat and took me away from the Institute, though not from the questions that it had raised. We've arrived, Miss Wheeler. I rubbed my tired eyes. We were parked outside the main entrance to Stockholm Airport. Oh, thanks, I said, rushing to grab my luggage and bag, not wanting to hold up traffic. You're welcome. Have a safe flight. Bye, I said as I slammed the door shut and dashed across the road to the airport entrance. I went straight to the departure board, a strange gnawing worry in my stomach that I couldn't quite place causing me to run. I looked up at the board. The time was 12:23 and my flight gate was open. The knot of worry eased as I stood there, looking at the time. I realised that I'd been subconsciously worried that the Institute had been lying about the time, though for what purpose I couldn't have told you. I printed out my ticket and went through security, a lengthier process than anyone wants, while still being less secure than the Institute's measures, which was crazy to think about. I picked up a charger at an outrageous price before taking advantage of a special lounge my expensive ticket gave me access to. Once we had boarded, I plugged my phone in to charge, ordered a glass of white wine, and tilted the chair back to relax. As soon as the phone came back to life, I immediately switched it off. Everyone can wait another day. I'm travelling. A good meal with a few more glasses of wine had me putting the seat fully back into its bed position, where I catnapped on and off while I watched films. The flight back passed quickly, my brain lulled into a more restful state by the alcohol. It wasn't until I'd cleared security at JFK that I finally switched my phone back on. An avalanche of notifications swept onto the screen once it had connected to civilization. Rather than swipe through each one, I unlocked the phone and checked my messages. There were 25 unread, about right for a couple of days, though too many considering I'd told everyone that I expected might contact me that I would be off the grid. There were 3 from my mom, 12 from one of the group chats I was part of, several junk ones from various companies that had my number, and 2 from my boss, Victoria. The group chat could wait, so I checked my mom's messages first. She was asking me how things had gone with Sarah, a follow-up when I hadn't replied, then the third was a realisation that I didn't have access to my phone and to call her when I got home safe and sound. Victoria's texts echoed the message she'd sent me before I travelled to the Institute. Hope you got there fine. Go get us a story that will go viral. Earn that first-class ticket. JK. But get us a story, okay? The second text read, Think you should be landing about now. We are ready to follow up on all your leads. Point us in the right direction. I closed the app, not wanting to show that I was online any more than I already had. I ordered an Uber and thought. I had to give Victoria something if I wanted to save my job. The channel couldn't afford the flights if they weren't going to get at least a couple of videos that garnered a lot of views and ad revenue, so her jokes about earning their ticket costs weren't jokes at all. The only story that I had was that the Institute was a cult that cured people of wanting to join a cult. It would be huge. It could make the channel and my career, but breaking that story could jeopardise Sarah's recovery. If people knew the Institute wasn't truly a cult, it could also mean hundreds or thousands of people joining real cults that would otherwise have been helped. I could write a story about the Institute and its ultra-high security, how I'd been tailed the whole time, but that wouldn't stand out amongst the thousands of other videos that claimed abusive conditions in the Haven, and I didn't have any evidence for it anyway. Even if it did well, would I be risking my contact with Sarah for a video that might not even save my job? I spent the half-an-hour Uber ride home thinking about it, interrupted halfway through by another message from Victoria, this one readable without unlocking. Please tell me you've got something. I waited until I was home, sitting on my couch with a coffee before I took out my phone again. This was decision time. My job, or a chance for my sister's return? I unlocked it, opened Vic's message, and started typing.